The narrator begins the story at the moment when the praying mantis caught its prey. In nature, everyone has an enemy, even people in this world are no exception. Their enemy is a force that cannot be defeated. Behind the thick walls of the giant fortress, a human crowd gathered in front of its main gates. Warriors, eros, and mercenaries stood next to their familiars, holding their breath and waiting for the order. Everyone held their breath and silently waited for the king to appear before them. When the monarch came out, his voice thundered solemnly. The time had come to stand against the enemy for the salvation of humanity, and he spoke about the sufferings that had befallen the people. The king blamed the monsters for everything, and the crowd painfully recalled all they had endured. He continued, the monsters had already captured almost the entire world, and at their head was the Lord of Darkness. The lives of people hung by a thread because of the monsters. The king acknowledged the threat, but assured, humanity would not be destroyed as long as faith still lived in their hearts. He loudly announced that he had gathered the strongest warriors from all lands, and they, having resources, time, and hope, would become superhumans. There were 47 of them, the last hope of the world, but among them stood a man tired of loud speeches. Hero Borst, smirking, said that this mission rather resembles a competition than a war. 3 joined him: Ficaccio, Alicia, and Abyss. Ficaccio loudly declared that he would never lose, Alicia shouted indignantly that her path was the longest, and Abyss indifferently said that it was all nonsense. He was advised to be more lenient, saying that true geniuses had gathered in his group. Hero Lebanon heard this conversation and became angry that they despised the demon army. Someone explained to him in a calm voice that everyone knew perfectly well how dangerous it was. He briefly recalled how Ficaccio, Borst, and Alicia had tempered their body and spirit for years, so it was no wonder their confidence sounded so loud. Elio advised Lebanon to relax because with such a face he would only scare the girls, and smiling, said that heroes never lose, addressing his comrade Jello for confirmation. Jello stood silently, his face showing a strange expression. Elio and Lebanon realized that he was more worried than the others. Behind the hero appeared the fairy Pain with water and a bowl in her hands. She handed him a drink and explained that the bowl was needed in case he suddenly felt ill. Jello apologized and admitted that after the king's speech, a burden of responsibility had fallen on him. Pain sighed and jokingly smiled, saying that the warrior was too serious. The fairy grumbled that Jello had not changed at all since she became his assistant, and said with annoyance that she would rather be next to a real hero like Borst. Leo asked her not to say such things. During training, he had got to know Jello well, strong in spirit, though stubborn. It was this strength of soul, he said, that made him a true hero. Moved by his friend's words, Jello crossed his arms and solemnly vowed to give all his strength to defeat the enemy, and then raise a glass together in victory. They briefly and firmly confirmed their words. It was a promise. The king raised his hand and loudly called the heroes to battle. His command rang out like the call of dawn to crush the Lord of Darkness and save the world, and the heroes set out on the campaign. 6 months passed. Under the tree by the campfire, the squad of heroes sat, tired and silent. Their gazes were fixed on the burning embers, in the tired eyes of which flickered reflections of past battles. Suddenly, a bird flew to the camp with a letter in its talons. Pain carefully unfolded the package and immediately felt that the envelope smelled of blood. Hello, with hope in his voice, asked if these were news from the kingdom and asked to see the letter. The fairy hesitated, but the hero assured that everything was fine and opened the message. The letter was brief and cruel. The squad was defeated. Ficaccio was made a test subject. Lebanon and Abyss died. Borst was killed. Alicia was maimed, and MacBook switched to the enemy's side. Hello frowned gloomily, and his companion could not believe it. Even Abyss, the formidable thunderer, had died. Anxiety instantly swept through the camp. The heroes were outraged why only bad news kept coming again, and the old wizard in a slouched hat asked Hello what they should do now. The old man reminded in a bitter tone. After half a year of travel, they had become stronger and reached the castle of King Jezidi. But even others, no less brave, suffered defeats. The news only confirms this tragic truth. While they were talking, Pain quietly packed her things, and this inevitably drew the wizard's attention. The wizard was about to ask what she was doing. Before the question was asked, the fairy sharply cut in. I am leaving. The world cannot be saved. She simply said, there are no fools who consciously go to their death. If the world is destined to perish, then at least one must live through the time that remains. And whoever wants to die earlier, let them do whatever they want. At that moment, Hello noticed something. The note lay like a verdict. The Elio squad was destroyed, their fate unknown. The warriors' faces darkened. In Hello's memory, their last farewell resurfaced again, a promise to win and celebrate together. The hero pressed his lips. He burst into the argument between the comrades and the fairy. and decisively said that Pain was right. No one will voluntarily go to their death. The fairy even shone with joy, thinking that the warrior had agreed, but he added, "One fool will be enough," and she froze, not understanding. The swordsman sincerely thanked his comrades for everything, but firmly declared that he would go to fight King Jadi alone. Pain desperately tried to dissuade him, shouting that it was certain death, but the hero calmly replied that he understood everything. He said, born a hero, so he will go where he must. At that moment, the hilt of his sword suddenly glowed, and the old sorcerer, noticing the light, whispered that it was the blade of courage. The glow fell upon everyone. It was a sword created by humanity in search of the absolute, responding to the owner's spirit strength and amplifying it to the limit. Only such a weapon could defeat the Demon King, and the heroes understood the spirit of Hello cannot be broken. Pain sighed deeply and quietly said that she would not refuse the warrior, saying that if he dies, it will be his choice. Turning around, she saw that others had also followed the hero. The fairy asked indignantly why they were going, but it did not stop them. Thai only asked for permission to join. The old wizard addressed Jello and said that they exist to support heroes, and he is one of them. That was enough to risk his life. Jello nodded gratefully and thanked his friends. The hero called them to move out to the final battle. Pain lagged behind, muttering that her life was more precious. She would not go. Suddenly, a terrifying scene appeared before her. The clearing was completely filled with monsters. Realizing there was no escape, the fairy sighed heavily and decided to join, saying she could not leave the hero alone. An ominous silence hung around the king's castle. Tension filled the great corridor. The sorcerer sensed something was wrong. Too quiet, possibly a trap, but the hero insisted and went on. They entered the throne room, where King Jadi sat on the throne, surrounded by a crowd of monsters. He introduced himself and coldly said he would not allow other creatures to interfere. A quick death would be too boring. Jello froze in tension. The battle began. The wizard struck first, casting a fire spell. But the flame flew past. It did not touch the enemy. The king looked at the fire with a sneer and said that this magic was only good for lighting candles. The next moment, the sorcerer was thrown against the wall so hard that he fell unconscious. Nearby stood Hello and cast a brief glance at the old comrade. The king walked forward unhurriedly, coldly thinking about how fragile people are. Jadi only asked if the heroes were ready to fight, and at that very moment, his companions began to fall dead one by one. The Lord explained that they had entered his magical field. Even the strongest cannot endure more than 10 seconds in it. Hello shouted and rushed into attack, swinging his sword, but the blade did not even touch the enemy. In the heat of battle, the demon noticed that the hero had a blade capable of wounding a demonic body. Hello threw all his strength into the fight, and it seemed that this final strike would finally hit the target. But Jadi only smiled coldly and said, "Yes, you are skillful. Every strike is precise. You can see years of training." But the Demon King stopped the blade near his temple, and with one movement threw the hero back. Hello's hand was torn off. He looked at it in horror and could not believe it was real. The demon with the sword in hand asked if he was the one the hero was looking for. Hello writhed in pain. He roared, clutching the remains of his hand. And the demon, enjoying the spectacle, mockingly said that human blades and heroic efforts are only the last futile attempt of mortals. The hero lay in agony, and the fairy Pain hurriedly tried to bring him to consciousness. Before him, the blade was stuck in the floor. The king stood over him, offering to pick up the sword and try to kill him. The fairy froze in amazement, and around them the demon's laughter quietly spread. Jadi resolutely stated that this is not a trap. He is unarmed and simply waiting for the strike. The hero shouted, cursing him and asking when the demons will be satisfied with human suffering. Jello gathered his last strength and thrust the sword into the enemy, but the blade shattered into fragments, leaving no wound. A thought flashed in his mind. Here it is, the natural enemy of humanity. The hero silently looked at the fragments of his sword. This enemy cannot be defeated. The demon loomed over the man like death itself. Fear gripped the hero's heart, and the Lord of Darkness said that before him is the limit of human capabilities, and humans cannot reach a higher level. A powerful explosion tore Jello from the castle and threw him into the abyss. Jadi disdainfully said that it is not fitting for humans to challenge beings of royal rank. The hero was falling down. The fairy rushed after him, and together they splashed into the water at the foot of the mountain. The stream grabbed them and carried them into the whirlpool, and Pain desperately struggled to bring the unconscious warrior to consciousness. In Jello's mind, a memory from 9 years ago suddenly flared up. The boy was telling him how amazing magic is. Young Jello absorbed every word of his older brother, carefully listening as he explained the basics of the summoning spell. The boy mage showed how it is done. He summoned an apple right in the center of the magic circle. Young Jello jumped up with excitement and exclaimed that it appeared out of thin air. but his brother explained no, he just moved it from the tree nearby. Then Zibai continued explaining and deliberately made a mistake in the circle. In the middle appeared a grotesque apple, and the boy explained that it was not a real fruit, but just a failed imitation. Zibai emphasized that the apple on the tree had not disappeared, so this creature appeared from somewhere else, and he asked Jello if he agreed that it was amazing. The boy shrugged confusedly, as if saying he did not understand anything. The brother laughed and said that Jello trains his muscles more than his mind, and these words echoed just before the hero's awakening. The fairy leaned over him, anxiously looking into his face and trying to understand if he was okay. Coming to his senses, Jello asked where they had ended up. The fairy replied that the current had carried them away from Juddy Castle and that the hero was on the brink of death. Jello looked at his bandaged hand and immediately decided that Pain was to blame. But the fairy objected. She said that strangers had bandaged it when they washed ashore. The hero froze in surprise when he noticed his older brother Zibai among the rescuers. They greeted each other, and the fairy, recalling training at the camp, rushed to hug the mage. Jello asked his brother in surprise why he was here. Zibai explained that they had a different mission, unrelated to the heroes, introduced his companions, and called Jello a legendary warrior. One of the mages remarked that the power of demons was impressive. Even the hero had received such wounds. Jello frowned and apologized to his brother. He bitterly said that he had lost not only himself, the other heroes had lost too, although it was supposed to be the other way around. Zibai silently placed his hand on his shoulder. The mage calmly replied that thanks to the hero's sacrifice, they managed to complete their mission. Their attack distracted the demon army. Hello and the fairy exchanged puzzled glances, and suddenly one of the mages shouted and pointed at the sky. Dark clouds swirled above them like a raging hurricane. The companions were frightened, but Zibai solemnly said, "Everything is going according to plan." Hello was eager to question his brother, but he only remembered how he once told him about summoning magic, the same story with the apple from another world. It turned out that while the heroes were storming the demon castles, the mages were not idle. They split into groups and stationed themselves around the world. Finally, they managed to complete the giant magical circle. Now, it encompasses the entire planet. One of the swordsmen sharply asked what exactly they were going to summon, but Zibai did not have time to answer. The demon army was already advancing from the forest, sensing the smell of blood, and Zibai only quietly muttered that the timing was unfortunate. The mages, led by Zibai, lined up in ranks, tensely preparing to defend themselves, and strictly ordered Hello to retreat. The elder brother asked the younger to stay behind. The plan is working, but Hello wanted to object. The mages unleashed a wall of flame that engulfed the front rows of demons, and the hero stood watching, knowing he could not help. Suddenly, a troubling thought flashed in his mind. Even his brother's power would not save them. He thought that it didn't matter how many more attempts people would make, how many campaigns or battles there would be, the result was always the same. And suddenly, the face of Jaddy flashed in his consciousness. The hero, with despair in his chest, realized people would never defeat the monsters. Deflecting attacks, Zibai shouted, "This time not only we will fight." Pain and Hello looked at him in surprise. The demons continued to advance, roaring like a wave of death. Hello, with tears in his eyes, begged his brother to flee while it was still not too late. And suddenly, something pierced the monster through a powerful beam or projectile. The hero froze in amazement, watching smoke burst from the monster's body. It fell to the ground and everyone froze, stunned. Pain inhaled cautiously. The air smelled unusual. From the smoke emerged strangers. Their footsteps echoed with a metallic clatter. Armored warriors with strange weapons, which no one had ever seen, appeared before them. One of them reported to Captain Caleb. "Unknown life forms detected. They threaten people. Order, destroy all demons." The armored squad, as one, responded to the order and prepared their weapons for battle. Just having appeared, the new warriors opened a hail of fire on the demonic horde. Each direct hit instantly destroyed the monsters. Not a single one even managed to react. Hello and the fairy froze in horror. The armed people exterminated all the demons in seconds. The hero asked in shock who they were, and Pain quietly whispered that they killed the monsters faster than she could blink. Zibai trembled with admiration. Their summoning worked. The mage raised his voice and announced with enthusiasm that they had summoned an entire world from another time and space. Hello and the fairy froze in shock, not believing their own eyes. Zibai quietly explained that humanity had exhausted all its strength, so they turned for help to people from a parallel world. These newcomers had taken a different path of development, had a completely different history, but their goal was the same: to survive. Pain exclaimed with admiration, "This is incredible." She shone with joy. Now all battles could be entrusted to the new allies. The mage nodded approvingly, and in his gesture was felt the same relief as in hers. Hello looked at the people from another world and felt that perhaps they were the ones who would save this world. And all of them. Meanwhile, the arrivals removed their helmets. Their faces were revealed, and they took a step forward. They dared to make contact and directly asked the mages, "Are you the rulers of this world?" Zibai frowned for a moment, but then responded with a greeting. Pain encouraged him, saying it was important. But one of the arrivals interrupted the mage. "Their own world is also on the brink of destruction." These words stunned everyone. The warriors asked for help from those who had called them. At this request, both Hello and the mages froze in surprise. Zibai suggested that maybe the language was different and they misunderstood them, and Pain agreed. Perhaps it was just their way of greeting. While the mages tried to figure it out, Captain Caleb received news. Stan's squad had arrived with the wounded. The captain approached the wounded soldier, who barely uttered words, trying to explain something, and immediately ordered medics to be called. She tried to calm the soldier, assuring him that the interdimensional generator was working and had already established contact with the parallel world. But her confidence in rescue caused strange concern in Zibai and Pain. Hello observed everything and tried to understand what was happening. Their world was engulfed by demons, and this connection was supposed to become a weapon in the war. The plan was simple. The heroes were to storm the demon castles, while the mages led by Zibai cast the summoning circle to draw help from another world. But now it turned out, those who were called are themselves begging for help. The captain apologized for the interrupted conversation and introduced herself Kayla, commander of the anti-mechanical front. Zibai also greeted warmly and introduced himself and his companions. Kayla, eyes wide open with surprise, asked again if this was really another world. The mage just looked surprised how easily they accept everything. He insisted that it was their circle that carried out the summons, but the captain sharply objected all this happened because of the interworld gate generator. Their gazes met and both instantly understood. Worlds had connected. Around them, they began to set up camp. And then both sides understood. In fact, they were calling each other, hoping for salvation. There are different worlds, but the essence is the same. Both are destroyed by the same enemy. Hello asked Kyle if there is the same adversary in their world and heard a resolute yes. In a parallel world, the enemies turned out to be robots, very same ones created by humans. Captain Kayla explained that already 80 of their world is under the control of artificial intelligence. The heroes listened, not understanding these words. Zibai, with a shadow of hope in his voice, suggested that if people created machines, they should know how to destroy them. Kayla bitterly replied that this has long not been the case. Artificial intelligence has surpassed humans and created weapons they themselves do not understand. The captain and the mage were fiercely arguing, insisted that his own enemy was more terrible. Pain intervened, asking if magical weapons could defeat the machines, and Kayla replied briefly in vain. Suddenly the air was filled with a strange melody. Warriors abruptly sprang up. Zibai asked where the music was coming from, and the fairy cautiously said that it was neither humans nor demons. Kayla clenched her teeth. They have come. Mechanical creatures like dogs came out into the clearing and addressed the people, assuring them that they were not enemies. The robots assured that they came to protect people and called them to come out, promising care and safety. While the drones buzzed, the squad hid among the ruins. Kayla explained that it was a trap the machines had learned to deceive to lure victims. One of the robots detected thermal signatures, living objects detected. An order instantly sounded. "Destroy!" Kayla shouted. "They found us," and ordered to prepare for defense. A firefight broke out. Bullets ricocheted off steel bodies, and Hello, stunned, realized that the same arrows that pierced demons were now powerless. One fighter reported, "The shells do not work." Kayla immediately ordered to switch weapons to an electromagnetic cannon. A powerful shot rang out, raising a cloud of dust. Pain and Zibai watched the power of the strike in awe, but Hello coldly remarked the enemies were unharmed. The warriors cursed. The robots had already adapted. One of the drones calmly said that the pain would soon pass, extending metallic torture instruments. Kayla's squad stood on the brink of despair when the mages intervened and summoned the element of earth. The earth split open, swallowing several robots, and Zibai stood amid clouds of dust, controlling the flows of magic. The robots called magic an unknown energy anomaly, and Zibai ordered another mage to attack. He raised his hands and summoned an ice storm that froze the enemies. The robots assessed the threat and suddenly shut down. Kayla's squad froze. The machines, which did not take fire, suddenly fell from magic. The mage said that these creatures were just iron, without a soul and without a drop of vital energy. Against magic, they were powerless. The soldiers finally breathed a sigh of relief. Kayla approached Zibai and extended her hand. Their weapons were powerless, but together with magic a chance appeared, and Zibai responded that the combination of their technologies and spells could save both worlds. They shook hands, agreeing to fight together. Hello looked at his brother, filled with pride, while Pain could not understand where that sparkle in his eyes came from. The hero felt that his brother, despite everything, did not stop while he himself was left with a broken sword and the burden of doubts. The fairy suddenly caught a scent. A crowd of demons was approaching them. An horde burst out of the darkness, creatures resembling palmstrives. People started talking about retreat, the murmur filled with anxiety. They decided to use flight magic to reach the fortress from which the heroes once set out. But at that very moment, the fallen robots came to life and began to repair themselves. The mages were gripped by anxiety, and Kalo explained these beings do not die. Even after the system shut down, they self-repair. People were surrounded from both sides. Demons were breaking through ahead. Robots were approaching from behind. Zibai shouted to the mage Flynn not to stop the spell. He shouted that the circle would activate in 5 minutes. They had to hold out, because only together could they survive. A new battle erupted. Flynn summoned lightning. It struck the very center and knocked down the robots. Large-scale magic began to take effect. Kayla decisively ordered, "Hold your positions, do not let the monsters break through while Flynn finishes the spell." It was almost ready. Jello also rushed into battle, but the older brother stopped him and ordered him to stay. It seemed that the people were slowly starting to gain the upper hand. Kayla called her subordinate Sasmu. He confidently assured that everything was under control, but suddenly a message sounded. "Training completed," and the frozen robots moved again. One of the drones suddenly changed shape. Its body flashed with a metallic glow and repelled the mage's spell, and from the speaker came a cold voice. "Magical energy recognized. Adaptation complete." Stunned, Zibai shouted to Kayla, "How could technology in a world without magic reflect hers?" At that very moment, the demons attacked a giant monster, grabbed one of the fighters. The demon crushed the soldier's head with one squeeze of his hand. He introduced himself as Kiva, a servant of Jitch himself. Kiva coldly stated that he came only for one thing, to finish off the hero Jello, and the soldiers instantly changed their target, deciding to eliminate the demon first. Kiva glanced at the strange metallic creatures and was surprised. He had never seen such magical beings. When they opened fire on him, he only smiled. The people fired an armor-piercing shell, but the demon repelled it with a simple wave of his hand. The shell exploded near the people, raising flames. Kayla covered her head, trying to understand what had happened. Kiva calmly said he had not heard of such warriors, but that changed nothing. "I will kill you all anyway," hissed the demon. Ahead surged a horde of monsters, behind mechanical killers mercilessly declaring the verdict. Destruction is inevitable. Jello stood amid the chaos and did not understand what was happening. They called others for salvation, but instead got a new war. He thought, probably this is the end. Kiva noticed the robots, surprised by the new type of magic, and rushed at Flynn, who was just finishing the spell. Kayla shouted to cover him, but suddenly a truck flew out from behind her. Soldier Ju was behind the wheel, threw the car at the demon, trying to stop him. However, Kiva stopped the vehicle with one hand and cast a spell. With a whirlwind, the demon spun the truck and hurled it back, killing Ju. The car was rushing straight at Kayla and Flynn. The captain rushed to create a magical barrier, but Hello threw himself forward. Clenching his teeth, he abruptly moved against the debris that was carrying them, drawing everyone's attention. His broken sword suddenly flashed with light and cut through the metal. The hero Rored was alive, and the fight was not over yet. Hearing his brother's voice, Zibai sharply turned. A round sword of courage blazed like living flame. He wanted to stop Hello, but he was already standing in the center of the field. In the next moment, the glow faded. The sword became a shard again. Kiva sneered. "Bravery will not overcome fear." The hero helplessly gripped the hilt, and the demon thanked him. "You saved me time." He lunged forward, trying to cut off the hero's head. Hello, realizing it was the end, shouted and swung the remains of the sword. But he threw the blade not at the demon, but in the opposite direction, and everyone, even Kiva, looked around in surprise. The blade plunged into the head of the robot, advancing on Zibai. The hero roared at the machines, "Come here, I am your enemy." Jello screamed again, and demons and robots rushed towards him because he was drawing them all to himself. Mag and Kayla understood that he was consciously sacrificing himself, and Kiva just laughed. Futile courage. Everyone will fall after him. Suddenly, the robots changed target, recognizing the demons as enemies. They opened fire on them. Shells thundered one after another. From the smoke stretched, a giant-handed demon grabbed a robot and threw it into the flames. Kiva, burned and covered in soot, stood amid the ruins and quietly muttered that it could still end in peace. But these creatures were too overconfident. Now he decided to destroy both humans and machines. The robot responded. Target changed, demons enemies. While demons and robots destroyed each other, the squad rushed to flee. Zibai asked Flynn about the spell. He nodded, and they activated the circle. At that moment, the demon thrust out its hand and grabbed Jello by the leg, not letting him escape. At the decisive moment, the robot intervened, and with one shot knocked the demon's hand away, saving Jello. Kiva did not bother to find out what kind of creature it was. He simply restored the damaged limb. Both demon and machine transformed, preparing for battle, and their silhouettes pulsed with energy. The people instantly took advantage of the moment and retreated, and Jello fainted mid-flight. Coming to his senses, he saw his brother nearby. Zibai said they were in the fortress, the last stronghold of humanity. It was safe here for now, although part of the squad had died, but some still managed to escape. The hero apologized for his weakness. The brother just shook his head. Everyone fought as they could, then added that the situation had become even worse. Zibai led Jello to the yard, showing her what was happening. Hundreds of people had gathered there. Among the crowd emerged arrivals from different worlds, each with their own language, clothing, and face. The mage explained that in all these worlds, humanity stands on the edge of an abyss on the brink of destruction. All these people are refugees fleeing their own apocalypses. Around unfolded landscapes of mixed worlds, city ruins, destroyed forests, and a sky with 3 suns, there were countless enemies. The squad composition: Captain Kayla, Hello, Zibai, and the fairy Pain stepped into a glowing magical portal leading to the temple's summit. What they saw there shocked even the fairy. The world seemed to have exploded and turned into a chaotic alloy of realities. Their goal was to save the survivors and transport them to the fortress without leaving the circle. By the mage's order, the squad rushed to search for survivors. Hello recalled how several worlds appeared simultaneously during the summoning. Zibai explained that in each of these worlds, humanity stands on the brink of extinction, so their mission was to unite forces. The mage and Kayla prepared for a rescue operation through magical circles, while Pain declared she would stay with the hero in the fortress. But Hello, steadfast and resolute, declared that he would go. The mage persistently tried to dissuade him, constantly reminding him of his injury. The fairy also pleaded with him to stay. However, the hero was unyielding. He had trained all his life to fight demons and could not just stand aside. If he stayed, he would save no one. The mage pondered. Finally, Zibai agreed but asked Kayla's opinion. Pain was outraged that she was not asked, and Kayla replied that Hello had proven he could fight even wounded. The hero looked ahead. He was ready. Thus began their new mission. From afar, the roar of enemies was already heard. Suddenly, monsters resembling moles burst from the ground and attacked them. The team instantly rushed into battle. The mage tensed, trying to understand what kind of creatures these were. They did not look like demons, so, from another world, suddenly the monsters hid underground and a rumble sounded. Something gigantic burst out of the ground, as if the mountain itself had come to life. The squad was gripped by horror. It seemed the rocks had come alive and moved. Pain shouted that there was no point in continuing, and they had to retreat. But Hello and Zibai noticed something strange. The hero pointed with his hand behind the building. A human silhouette appeared. The fairy and the mage exchanged a quick glance. The squad decided to check it out. They rushed to the ruins, and Hello, peeking from behind the corner, suddenly noticed a humanoid figure he wanted to call out. But Pain stopped him. The fairy whispered barely audibly, "That creature is too big for a human." The squad stared tensely. The figure sharply turned around. A human leg fell from its mouth. The monster moved forward, counting the number of living beings before it. It came almost up close, and at that moment everyone realized this is the enemy. We must attack. The beam weapon had no effect, so they decided to use a grenade launcher. But Hello noticed a woman with 2 children behind the monster and shouted that there were people there, while the monster had already raised its hand to strike. The hero put forward his healthy shoulder and deflected the attack, shouting for others to save the people. The monster froze, surprised that the enemy was still alive, while the mage created an illusory fog. Zibai summoned lightning that struck the monster and loudly warned Hello, "Don't sacrifice yourself. You won't withstand such blows." Meanwhile, the rescuers grabbed the woman with the children and led them out of the ruins. The monster dispersed the fog and rushed after them. They ran through narrow alleys, hoping the giant wouldn't fit. Zibai asked Kyle if it was hard to carry the child, and she whispered briefly, "I can manage," while the mage looked ahead and froze in amazement. On their way, a huge root suddenly appeared and completely blocked the road. Pain screamed in panic that the giant would catch them. Kayla raised the cannon, shot the rope across the chasm, and called everyone to follow her. The team, holding onto the cable, carefully climbed over the ravine. The magic circle was already very close. The fairy turned around and thought that the giant had retreated, but suddenly he jumped. The monster flew over the chasm, and the crew fled in panic. The ground trembled beneath his steps. Suddenly, the ground beneath their feet trembled. Mole monsters burst out of it and attacked the giant, giving the team a chance to escape further. Looking back, the squad realized they had ended up in a real mole's lair, and all around a battle had already begun between them and the giant. The elements merged into chaos. Dust, stones, roaring people were still shooting back, keeping their distance. Jello noticed something, but his brother grabbed him by the shoulder and pulled him forward, ordering him to run. They reached the circle time to return. Pain grumbled that she had enough heroism. The mage only dreamed of rest, but the boy suddenly pointed ahead. There were people. A storm was approaching from behind, and the hero immediately rushed to help. Zibai left Oli and Petalo to guard the portal and rushed after his brother. The fairy ran after them, grumbling that they were saving everyone in a row again, and the mage, unable to stand it, sternly threatened. "You will get 1,000 scoldings." Around swarmed horrors. Flesh-eating plants, corpses, alien creatures. It seemed hell itself had opened its gates. Finally, the team teleported back to the fortress along with the surviving people. Zibai checked everyone was alive, though utterly exhausted. Other mages ran up to them, shocked by how many people were saved. The team reported that in all the worlds that merged, there was no place left where people could survive. And then even worse news came. Someone fell ill. The mage immediately recognized the sick person. It was the king himself. A few people also caught the disease and were immediately isolated. It was said that the pandemic came from one of the annexed worlds. Zibai, Hello, and Kayla stood stunned. People grumbled that enemies were everywhere, and the fairy also began to whine. Hello listened silently and realized every world has its natural enemy, and humanity cannot fight them all at once, but suddenly a thought appeared in his head. Meanwhile, the mage gave the order to gather all the refugees. They urgently needed to find out everything about each of the united worlds. When asked if he had rested at all, Zibai coldly replied, "There is no time for that." Representatives of different worlds gathered in one hall, and the mage addressed them, begging to find a way to avoid total destruction. It was known that 13 worlds had merged into one, and in each humanity stood on the brink of extinction. The enemy was christened the natural opponent. Zibai was the first to speak. His world is the world of the dead, where demons are the natural enemy of humanity. Then Kayla took the floor. She described her world of machines, a place where people created robots that broke free from control. Next, they described the world of parasites, disgusting creatures that invade human bodies and enslave their will. Then there was the world of giants. There the enemies were the mountains themselves, which move and destroy all living things. In the world of great disasters, its enemy is a monster that can wipe entire cities off the face of the earth. The world of celestial monsters, where the Persilians rain creatures that fall from the sky and devour all living things. The world of wild nature, where the earth itself has become hostile. Animals and plants have grown to gigantic sizes and mercilessly destroy people. In the world of the new tyranny, the enemies became the new people, mutants, intellectually and physically superior to ordinary people. In a world engulfed by God's wrath, the enemy is the divine punishment itself, which scorches everything around. A world engulfed by a destructive curse. Greenery rots, water darkens, and with each day the planet becomes colder. The world is a gaming hell, where reality has become a cruel game, and the enemy is the system itself. A lawless world, where the greatest threat is the people themselves. Gangs, mafia, and criminal syndicates that arose after wars and the collapse of morality. And finally, the world of the great tree, where the world root itself sucks life from the planet and turns it into a merciless desert. When all representatives of the worlds finished their speeches, Zibai summed up. Now everyone, both people and their enemies, gathered in one world. He asked if there were any ideas on how to solve this catastrophe, but the hall was filled with a deathly silence. The silence continued. The mage realized that everyone was exhausted by their wars and now also connected by foreign pain. In despair, he thought that perhaps they only had to wait for death. Jello sat silently in the corner and listened. The hero thought about the enemies. Each was powerful, like an army of demons. Memories of previous battles returned one after another. Zibai apologized to everyone for not being able to provide a solution. And suddenly, in the silence, someone raised their hand. It was Jello. His voice cut through the silence. He asked if it was possible to make all the enemies destroy each other. The hall froze in silence. The representative of the world of heavenly monsters immediately mocked the proposal. But the hero did not back down. He saw how enemies of different kinds were already throwing themselves into battle, and his words made the mage think. Zibai confirmed. Yes, indeed, demons and machines were already attacking each other, but despite this, the majority still objected, putting forward arguments against it. Jello was bombarded with questions and examples, as if pressing the proof that their enemy was the strongest. and it seemed the whole hall united against one hero. Everyone insisted that their natural enemy was the most terrible. Jello was confused and glanced at his brother, seeking support. Suddenly, Zibai, with a smirk on his lips, said that even if all the enemies of the world united, they still could not defeat the demons. These words caught everyone by surprise. Jello looked at his brother in amazement, not understanding his intention. While around people flared up with indignation, each insisted that their enemy was the most dangerous. The mage teased them further, repeatedly insisting that demons were invincible. Jello looked embarrassed, not understanding what it was about. Tension hung in the hall, but Zibai calmly continued describing demons as beings before whom all other threats become nothing, and finally added that other worlds could only be glad they did not have such enemies. Jello wanted to ask his brother why he was doing this, but did not have time. The crowd exploded. Representatives of the worlds began to quarrel, each proving that their enemy was scarier. Zibai addressed the representative of the giant's world, and with a bitter smile reminded that they had already fought such creatures, and they turned out weaker than demons. The giant flared with anger, and several more voices joined the dispute, especially the representative of the world of great disasters, who boldly declared that his monster would crush any giant. The envoy of the parasite's world sharply intervened in the conversation, calling his enemies the most insidious. And to this, the man in the mask coldly replied that parasites were only a mindless form of life that would not withstand a meeting with aliens. Fights broke out in the hall. Voices reached sharp edges. Each world praised its threat. Kayla tried to calm the crowd, and the brothers only exchanged glances. Women stood aside and whispered among themselves that men were the same everywhere. Kayla asked Zibai why he did this. The mage answered seriously. He explained that this was exactly how it all began. Enemies fought each other, and people found themselves in the middle. Zibai tried to show this by example. Kayla, stunned, asked again if he really deliberately provoked the quarrel. The masked man called it absurd, but the mage replied that he himself did not believe in such a simple trick. He explained, even from a foolish argument a conflict can grow, but what if that energy is directed in the right channel? Maybe they have a chance. Zibai admitted, the plan is crazy, but even a tiny probability is better than zero. In desperation, you have to try everything. He raised his eyes to Hello, seeking support. Kayla said the method was radical, but the people in the hall suddenly fell silent, pondering. She added that despite all the chaos, these two brothers had not lost faith, and Hello again pondered the nature of the enemies. It seemed to him that these creatures were invincible, while somewhere far away the battle was still ongoing. Kiva fought the robot, and finally when he cut off its metal head, grumbling irritably that he had lost too much time. While restoring his arm, the demon felt the hero's name burst into his memory, Hello, and hissed ominously that he would not escape a second time, and the rest was short-lived. In the merged worlds, new clashes flared up. Creatures that were natural enemies of humans were already fighting among themselves. Meanwhile, people were actively discussing the situation. All worlds had merged into one, the world of the dead. This happened because of a magical circle they tried to use to call for help, and in each of them humanity was on the brink of extinction. Kalo explained that in their world they activated a generator of interdimensional gates. Others admitted that they simply prayed not to God, but to something else, and their energy broke through space and wove all realities into one. Together with humans, all natural enemies ended up here. The world turned into an arena of total war. A priest from the world of God's wrath suddenly burst into a hysterical scream, shouting that the wrath of heaven was about to fall upon them, and Oli tried to calm him down, but in vain. One of the refugees from the world of great disasters stood and watched the scene, saying that religion is everywhere, and his companion quietly replied that faith is each person's choice, not an obligation. The priest kept running in panic, although he had already been explained that there was no angry God here. So Zibai reminded his colleagues about calming magic, and after a healing spell, the man finally quieted down and apologized for his behavior. Bandaged refugees from the world of new people interrupted the conversation. They said that in their world they were even forbidden to hope, and if they had religion, perhaps more lives could have been saved. One of them, wrapped in bandages, addressed Zibai with a sharp question: how exactly do they plan to set enemies against each other? Masked representatives from other worlds also joined the conversation. The mage pondered but did not give a clear answer. He cautiously suggested simply sitting together and thinking over a joint solution, and immediately a wave of surprise and tension swept through the hall. Suddenly a giant from that world exploded with rage. He rushed forward, grabbed the mage by the chest, and growled that he was just babbling. His roar echoed through the hall. Others wanted to intervene, but someone present stopped them, explaining, "This giant is a completely different race of people, rough and hot-tempered." People tried to calm the brute, But it only made him angrier. He roared that he was afraid of no one. At that moment, Hello grabbed the giant by the hand with which he was holding the mage and calmly ordered him to release his brother. The giant turned his gaze to him, furious at such audacity. But the hero squeezed his hand so hard that the sound of bones cracking was heard, and repeated the request again. A tense silence fell over the hall. Other giants watching whispered admiringly that this warrior was incredibly strong after all. He could hold Pacquiao, and one of them asked the giant to release the mage. Zibai asked his younger brother to unclench his fingers. Jello obeyed, and at the same time Peiki also let go, while Mag, having fallen to the floor, got up and ordered the quarrel to stop, but their gazes still blazed with rage. Peiki was already opening his mouth to bark again, but a woman from his world hit him on the head with her fist. She and her partner introduced themselves, Salmon and Bragent. Peiki only muttered that all they can do is wag their tongues, and started grumbling again. A dispute flared up again between him and Jello, this time about fights with demonic giants, and the giant insisted that the hero had no idea what it meant to fight them. But Bragent intervened, saying that the word fight is inappropriate here. Even giants are powerless before such creatures. Peiki was embarrassed. Zibai immediately teased him sarcastically. Pain joined in jokingly, but the argument was suddenly interrupted. Gyuta, the commander of the Eastern Mage Detachment, entered the hall with the rescued people, and Zibai greeted him with a sincere smile, saying that he had just arrived at the start of the strategic meeting. And as soon as Gyuta appeared, someone immediately asked if they had found a way to salvation. Kayla, seeing the arrivals, exclaimed, "This is General Garsp, the legendary commander." Her detachment instantly saluted. The general clarified if they were also from her world. Kayla confirmed. The general responded with a greeting and quietly added that only a few people from the anti-mechanical front survived with him. Kayla asked about the headquarters. The general sighed heavily. There is no communication. The headquarters was not destroyed by robots, but everyone there disappeared without a trace. Their detachment wandered the forests for a long time, until the mages rescued them. Kayla stood stunned, not believing what she heard. Zibai quietly asked if this Garsp was really that important, and Kayla nodded yes, very much so. She explained that he is a commander who won countless battles against robots. Perhaps he is the one who will help find a solution. Without wasting time, the mage suddenly offered the general to lead them all instead of himself. At such informality, Kayla only sighed heavily, and Garsp agreed on the condition that no one objects, and silence immediately fell in the hall. Some nodded in agreement. Zibai confirmed that everyone was for. Hello and Pain jokingly raised their hands, which caused Kayla's indignation. She demanded more respect for the general, and she was immediately silenced. The general smiled and asked to forget about ranks. The front no longer exists, so now he is just an old soldier. His words moved everyone. Kayla nodded sadly. Garsp took command. Zibai briefly outlined the current situation. The space of the world is shrinking, borders are blurring, everything has turned into a chaotic tangle of realities. Because of this, objects shifted in space, and now new coordinates will have to be explored. Garsp asked about the magic circles. After all, it was through them that he ended up here. Zibai handed the floor to Flynn. Flynn enthusiastically explained that magic circles are located all over the world, and their coordinates are preserved. They can be used as portals for quick movements, but only with the participation of a mage. After a short pause, the general sighed and admitted that these circles will become an invaluable tool both for movement and as a last line of retreat. The general briefly emphasized that Kayla had already seen robots fighting demons, and the captain, with a trembling voice, confirmed. It was thanks to Hello that they survived. Then his act practically saved everyone. Pacquiao snorted as if brushing it off, saying it was just a coincidence, and immediately got slapped for it. The hero only agreed yes, it really was a coincidence. Images of demons still flickered in his mind. He told that the battle between robots and demons was evenly matched, but he could not put into words what he saw. It was simply incredible. Hello quietly whispered that it was just stunning, and Kayla confirmed they saw everything with their own eyes. She, barely holding back her voice, told that demons pierced the robot's armor, which even armor-piercing shells could not penetrate. Pacquiao grumbled again that a demon cannot defeat a giant, and again got hit on the head. The general listened attentively. Garsp began to explain. A tactic based on inciting hostility between opponents can be effective if you influence their natural enemies so that they destroy each other. It can become their chance. The general warned casualties are inevitable, and Kayla and Hello caught every word he said. Suddenly someone raised a hand, asking for the floor. Gasp gave permission. A man named Masayoshi stepped forward. He introduced himself as the commander of the Couch Squad. His comrade, teacher Takaya, tried to stop him, but the general gestured to continue, and Masayoshi declared with a stern expression that the best strategy was simply to wait it out, which confused both the mage and the general. Masayoshi muttered to himself, "Don't get involved in fights, and don't provoke enemies. There's a chance they will destroy each other and leave the people untouched." Zibai clarified if he really meant just hiding. He nodded and coldly explained, "Run and hide until the enemies destroy themselves." Hello clenched his fists. How long can they keep running? They have been running all their lives, and because of this, demons pushed them to the edge of the world, where rage boiled. Takaya apologized for his colleague and asked not to pay attention, but the general unexpectedly replied that there was some truth in his words. This shocked both Peiki and the hero. Gasp said coldly, "The main thing now is to survive and gather information. Rushing into open confrontation without knowledge is pure suicide, so for now the smartest thing is to silently observe and wait." Zibai agreed, but added, "Observations alone will not change the world. We need to think about the next step." The general looked out from the tower onto the fortress courtyard. There were many wounded and devastated faces. He said that despair is a natural reaction, but even in darkness one must seek the light. The refugees silently caught his words. Pain finally asked the general what they should do now. Gasp smiled and said, "Let's start small. Tell me, who are you?" While the general and the fairy argued about Pain's origin, the people gathered in a circle. Zibai and Kayla watched attentively, and the captain addressed the mage. "Is it really possible to control battles between natural enemies?" The mage smiled and replied that in theory, yes. Magic once also began with hypotheses. People are capable of creating with the power of imagination, so maybe this will work too. Kayla shrugged. "So what is the problem?" Zibai seriously agreed with the general. "The implementation of such a plan is dangerous. It requires people ready to give everything." Jello gloomily looked at the floor. The mage did not want to put the burden on his brother again. But suddenly, a familiar silhouette appeared in the doorway. At the threshold stood Alio, next to him his fairy assistant. Jello could not believe his own eyes. Zibai asked if this was really the 14th hero. They exchanged greetings. The hero asked where he had disappeared to. Alio said he survived by a miracle and now came to help. Jello's heart tightened with hope. Meanwhile, somewhere high in the mountains, a shadow flashed. Kiva was chasing Jello. The severed demonic hand that once grabbed the hero now flew after him, catching his magical trail, and suddenly froze. Before Kiva stretched a field littered with piles of demon corpses. He muttered in surprise that people are not capable of this, but noticing the trail, he understood someone is heading to the human camp. Meanwhile, battles between natural enemies did not cease. Giants killed demons, leaving behind mountains of dead bodies. Whole hordes of giants were falling through the valleys straight to the last stronghold of humanity. At the very moment Kayla finished training, suddenly someone called her. Something was beginning. Alio approached Kayla, spoke lightly and casually, and then, smiling, handed her a flower, a gift in honor of their acquaintance. Confused, she carefully took the flower. The boy explained that in his culture it is customary to give girls flowers. Kayla inhaled the scent in surprise. She recalled that Alio is a hero who once fought the Demon King. She asked if he was wounded. He replied lightly that everything was fine and began to tell about the meaning of the flower. Without waiting, Kayla instantly threw the flower into her mouth. The hero froze in amazement. She simply explained, "Organics are a valuable source of nutrients." Alio only embarrassedly asked her to forget about it. Jello interrupted their conversation and grumbled that the friend was hitting on girls again, then noted that Alio woke up unusually early today, but he just waved it off. Days can be different. Jello admitted that he could not sleep. Anxiety was tearing him apart. He understood that it was too early to act, but he could not stand sitting idle. After the fight with Deity, Alio asked about his wounds, and the hero replied, "Yes, the demon was stronger, and although he gave all his strength, he still suffered defeat." In response, he asked Alio about his own battle, and he said the fight was even, but did not want to admit that he also lost. The hero explained that if you are a true warrior, you must understand what you are fighting for. He was ashamed that he did not keep his promise, but Jello assured him as long as they are alive, there is a chance, and they will still be able to fight. Alio fell silent, sighed with a smile. "You haven't changed at all." Kayla silently watched them. Meanwhile, a tense meeting was taking place in the fortress. Bizats, a refugee from the world of destructive curse, loudly announced to the king the diagnosis. He bore the seal of the curse from his world. During one of the missions, it got here. Zibai asked if there was a cure, but no one answered. Bizats insisted on strict quarantine. Mag swore angrily. Then Pio from the world of parasites coldly reminded that their creatures can also infect and subjugate people. At that moment, Jello, Kayla, and Alio entered the hall. The hero immediately asked his brother about the council's decision, and the mage calmly replied that they decided to stick to the waiting plan. The plan was simple: hide, run, wait it out. But Alio sharply objected it wouldn't work. He explained that after the defeat he did not use the magic circle, and returned on foot. He saw how a horde of giants was moving toward the fortress, leaving behind piles of flesh. There were at least 10 giants, one of them was over 20 meters tall. Their arrival had been expected for a day. Alio added in a cold voice, "If they hide in the fortress, everyone will die." Zibai's face darkened as if a heavy cloud covered his features. Oli shouted in despair. The hero should have reported this earlier. Peiki, who was sleeping, turned over and licked his lips in his sleep. But Salmon kicked him and ordered him to get up. Now is not the time to sleep. A sharp tension hung over the camp. The news about the giants' advance spread instantly. Peiki attacked Alio, cursing and accusing him of silence, and he calmly replied that he wanted people to rest at least a little. One sleepless night would change nothing. Alio couldn't resist joking that thanks to this Peiki finally got some sleep, which caused a new outburst of indignation from him. Jello smiled, appreciating his friend's concern, but Kayla only sighed for her. It was not concern but recklessness. Meanwhile, General Gasp asked Salmon what they should know about the giants. She explained that the piles of flesh were their marks. Giants mark their territory this way, and upon seeing new lands, they disperse in large groups in all directions, expanding their domain, led by their leader Jinbek. People realized that the fortress stood directly in the giants' path. Kayla bitterly whispered that there was no other refuge. All worlds were destroyed. Many were wounded. They would not be able to escape. Peiki struck the table with his fist, loudly calling to accept the fight and firmly assuring that Jinbek would not be among this group. Everyone understood. Chances were slim, but there was no other way, so they decided to act according to Hello's plan. The hero stood stunned. He hadn't even thought that his idea would be taken as the basis. The fairy explained that now they would try to do the same as before to set the enemies against each other. The plan was even named after him. Thanks to Alio's reconnaissance, they knew the area well. The giants were moving from their world to the world of the dead, and if they bypassed the coast, they would encounter other enemies. The first beings on their path would be creatures from the world of New Tyranny. Hagi, a refugee from there, explained. These new people are strong and smart, but outwardly indistinguishable from ordinary ones. The general concluded. In the eyes of the giants, they would look like ordinary people. Their squad would go to meet the giants, pretending to surrender, but in reality, they would lead them straight to the enemies from New Tyranny. Everyone froze, carefully absorbing the general's plan. Salmon explained that giants attack those who resist, and those who surrender take into slavery, so there is a chance for success. But Bragent coldly noted that this is only hope. Giants might just kill everyone without listening. They began deciding who would go to negotiate. Suddenly, someone raised their hand. Hello asked for permission to go alone. Zibai immediately objected. Kayla looked skeptically at the hero and said that he hardly looked like a diplomat. The mage indignantly replied that she was exaggerating, and the hero just blushed. But he did not back down. He wanted to prove that he could be useful, looked at Alio and called him. Alio suddenly rushed forward and unexpectedly struck Hello. The hero flew away but managed to dodge. Alio's sword flashed right in front of his face, and everyone around froze. Alio pointed the blade at his friend and sternly ordered him to step back. He was wounded and exhausted, and then he himself offered to negotiate. Silence fell in the hall. No one dared to intervene. Heidi noticed that Alio could really pass as a new man, young, handsome, without a single scar. Zibai asked if he understood the risk, and Alio confidently replied that he was ready. But Kayla looked at him suspiciously. She remembered the morning meeting. Then he seemed wounded, but now he had not a single scratch. Hello was about to object, but Alio smiled and asked to trust him. In the castle of the rabbit king Jati, the demon Kiva reported to his lord. The world is in chaos. Unknown steel creatures are destroying demons. There are mountains of corpses around, and the landscape is changing. He conveyed this through a communication sphere held by a cyclops rabbit. Hearing Kiva's alarm, Jati ordered action. When the servant tried to dissuade him from leaving, the king struck him with magic. This can happen to others, but not to me, Jati said coldly and left the castle. Around him was true chaos, and suddenly he heard a telepathic voice in his head. It was Nudo. The 12th demon king Muta was playing chess. His pieces were living creatures. He said that the number of humans had increased. Other kings were already acting, and with concern asked why Jati was inactive. Jati asked what Lord Bayako had ordered. Muta replied that Bayako did not care. He had set father and son against each other, and one figure devoured the other. Act at your own discretion, he said, while the heroes had long since shown no signs of life. Jati was suddenly surprised. Could it be that no hero had come to Nudo? Even Caplia confirmed that he had not met them. Meanwhile, a negotiation group was already gathering around Alio. Several attractive volunteers capable of passing as new people were taken into it. There were 5 in the group: Kovo and Shox from the world of robots, Lum from the world of the dead, Shigo from the world of disasters, and Jupiter from the celestial monsters. The guide was Bragent. Zibai ordered Lum to transfer the team to the meeting place. The squad was tense preparing for the mission. Alio boldly climbed the fortress wall. His tiny assistant slipped out from under the cloak and quietly purred in her language. Kayla approached from behind, and the hero jokingly asked if she had come to kiss him goodbye. But she answered seriously she wanted to be sure of one thing. She directly asked why he had not even tried to fight the demons then. Alio's face tensed. The question hit him right in the heart, and she said that deserters are revealed not by words, but by actions. She had seen such soldiers more than once, and Alio quietly replied, he simply lacked courage. He told her that during his travels he saw how demons mocked people, and it was then he realized this was a battle they could not win. Kayla listened silently, not taking her eyes off him. Alio continued. After that he simply ran away, leaving everyone fear proved stronger than duty and honor. Then he asked, after all this, does he have the right to call himself a hero? Despite doubts, Alio still continued the story. After the defeat he wandered for a long time, but when the worlds began to merge into chaos, he had no choice. He had to return to the fortress and play the role of a hero. Kayla understood he did not tell about the giants because he was simply fleeing from reality. Despite doubts, Alio still continued the story. After the defeat he wandered for a long time, but when the worlds began to merge into chaos, he had no choice to return to the fortress and play the role of a hero, and Kayla immediately understood that he did not tell about the giants because he was simply fleeing from reality. He replied that upon returning, he met Hello. He thought that a friend who also lost and fled would be able to understand him. Remembering that burning look of the swordsman, he suddenly realized Hello is not broken. He is different. He has always been a true hero. Kayla, with a question in her voice, asked, why then did he agree to lead the operation? Alio whispered that Hello must live longer than him. He could not allow his comrade to go on a suicide mission, so he simply took his place. And now everything was getting out of control. He quietly cursed himself, but Kayla objected. She said that she just wanted to be sure. Risking his own life, he showed true courage. Her words touched him, and suddenly Kayla handed him a flower, saying that it was a gift in return. The hero smiled and carefully accepted it. She anxiously asked herself what meaning that flower had. She felt it was not meant for food. Kayla was already about to leave, but he stopped her. Alio thanked her and asked her to believe in him. Kayla, placing a vow on the same flower, promised to give all her strength. The magical teleportation circle lit up. Lum said everything was ready. The squad set off, and the people from the fortress watched them for a long time. Zibai addressed Alio and emphasized that the fate of the fortress was now in their hands. Alio asked not to pressure him because he was already exhausted. Heidi approached him, whispered that the new people are cruel, hugged him tightly, and asked him to take care of himself. Alio thanked her, thinking that she was trembling with fear. Then he addressed the team. They will meet the giants, pretend to surrender, and then lead them to the new people. He warned, giants might not listen and kill them, but they will not retreat because they consider themselves the most beautiful in the world. This is how the escort squad of giants began their journey. Gello stayed in the fortress and sincerely wished his friend good luck. As soon as the squad reached the meeting place, one of the giants instantly crushed a man from the group. The huge creatures loomed over them and sternly ordered them to speak more simply, otherwise they would crush everyone. The people trembled, and Alio felt the same horror as once before demons, but restrained himself, remembering his comrades. He recalled he is a hero, and this time he will not run away. The squad communicated with the giants. They mocked, ordering to continue the conversation, as if playing with prey. The giants demanded words, and Shox, unable to contain his rage over Kovo's death, burst out with a scream of despair. While Alio tried to calm him, provoking these creatures was forbidden. He realized they must pretend complete surrender and cunningly lure them to the new people, so he loudly announced that they surrender. Alio explained that their camp was nearby and they had no strength to resist, asking only for mercy. The giants laughed, humiliating him, and the hero thought to use calming magic like the one used then with the mad priest. Then Shigo intervened in the conversation and spoke like a merchant, enthusiastically praising their camp, saying that if the giants spared them, they would get everything they desired. The giants were silent. Shigo felt memories surfacing. Before the catastrophe, he was a talented negotiator, and now his experience could save their lives. He repeatedly convinced the giants, insisting, humans are just looking for a safe place and do not want to fight. Suddenly, one of the giants struck and crushed Shox, who was standing nearby. Then he lifted his body, bit off a piece, and grumbled irritably that the meat was tough. "What kind of scoundrels are these?" he roared. Alio rushed to him, shouting that they were not enemies. But the giant only laughed. Humans were never enemies to him, only food and amusement. He raised his mace and aimed it directly at Lum, swinging before the strike. Bragent managed to push Lum away and save the sorceress, but his hand was badly injured, and the girl screamed in confusion, not knowing what to do. The giant gritted his teeth and ordered to act according to the plan. Alio asked Lum to activate calming magic, but she coldly replied that the spell had been active from the start. The giants simply did not succumb to it because of their cruel nature. It became eerie hearing their conversation. The giants wondered what the girl had done to them. The negotiator remembered his family and, overcome with fear, tried to negotiate again. He hoped. If the giants could speak, maybe they would understand, and he was ready for any conditions, but the giants swung the mace again. The blow shattered the agent completely. Alio did not have time to do anything. An oppressive silence fell. Jupiter could not stand it and flew into the sky. He decided that negotiating with such stupid creatures was pointless. Disregarding the giants, he rose higher and opened fire. The huge creatures froze in surprise. Jupiter aimed, focused, and fired a beam. The laser hit the target directly. He boldly shouted that the giants were stupid monsters, but one of them jumped so high that he reached Jupiter's flight altitude. And at that very moment, the giant crushed the man with a dull smack, like an insect. Alio, watching this, hesitated whether to attack or retreat. Shatton felt that the chances of completing the mission were almost gone and wondered if they would manage to do anything when the heavy hand of Bragent lay on his shoulder, and he said, "If they are still alive, it means the giants are interested, and he will take the entertainment upon himself." Alio was about to ask what he meant, but Bragent only ordered not to interfere whatever happens, then stepped forward and took out a small pouch. Inside were pills made from crushed hearts of giants. Red booster, the last resort in a hopeless fight, and he poured them into his mouth. Bragent's body instantly changed. Veins swelled, muscles filled out, skin tightened, and his eyes flashed red. He loudly called to the giants, inviting them to play with him. The giants laughed out loud and accepted the challenge with wild pleasure. The fight flared up. Lum and Alio stood aside, frozen and unable to believe what they saw. Bragent fought like an explosion of power. Blows rained one after another like an avalanche. But he also received terrible injuries. The sorceress and the hero held their breath, not taking their eyes off. Bragent was facing the giants alone. Looking at his desperate efforts and the smiling faces of the enemies, Alio realized the giants were just having fun. The entire crowd of giants rushed at the wounded warrior and finished him off. Under the blows, his body simply disappeared. Only two remained. Finally, the giants crushed Bragent once and for all. One of them smiled broadly and said it was fun. Then all eyes turned to the hero. One giant bent down to him and asked if there were still such strong dwarfs. Lum fell to the ground in horror. Alio realized this was his chance. The sorceress whispered that these creatures were even more cruel than demons, but Shatton commanded, "Act according to the plan." They moved on, leading the giants to the territory of the new people. Along the way, they fiercely killed and devoured monsters from other worlds and lost patience, but Alio persistently assured that they were close. He suddenly remembered the map of Grasp. Somewhere nearby there should have been a settlement of new people, but suddenly a cliff opened before them, and the hero and Lum froze in place. Below, at the foot of the cliff, a strange city shimmered, and Alio recognized it. This was the settlement of the new people. One of the giants asked if this was the place, and as soon as he heard the affirmative answer, the others burst out with a joyful roar. He had found new prey. The giant waved his hand, bidding farewell to the people as if challenging them. Alio ordered to activate the fast transport spells. The people rushed forward. They sped towards the city at a crazy speed, and the giants chased after them, roaring and breaking the ground beneath their feet. The pursuit was becoming simply unbearable. Alio asked Lum if she was ready. The sorceress raised her staff and cast an illusion. The giants suddenly froze, disoriented by the lightning-fast mirage. The hero and his partner crossed the border of the lands of the new people. The giants lost sight of them. Alio and Lum dissolved into the crowd, changed by clothing magic. Lum was pleased that she managed to recreate the attire, but the hero warned. They must not relax. It could be no less dangerous here. People stood around them, perfect, beautiful, but cold. Alio felt that behind this beauty hid hostility. Ahead appeared a tall woman in a mask. The hero stubbornly hoped their disguise would not be revealed. But he was even more struck by the fact that despite the appearance of the giants, no one moved. Their faces were stone. The giants became enraged. Their patience ran out, and they decided to destroy everything around. They rushed at the city, but the new people did not even blink. Alio clenched his fists, hoping the enemies would destroy each other. The giants smashed buildings, roared, and scattered debris. The new people only watched silently, and the hero and the sorceress stood observing, not understanding what was happening. Alio thought that if the giants reached the fortress, it would become a tragedy, but their actions surprised him. They did not look like enemies at all. Doubt crept into his heart like a shadow. Maybe these are not enemies, but just other people. Maybe he had brought death to the innocent here. One of the giants roared and swung a mace at a child. Lum screamed. She wanted to warn the boy, but it was already too late. The blow fell on him. The giant looked at his club in shock. The child's body was already lying on it, and a blade gleamed in his hand. The child suddenly broke free, cut the giant's tendons on the arm, and dashed like a predator. Then the adults rushed after they jumped on the giants and tore them apart with their bare hands. In just a few minutes, a whole crowd of giants lay dead. The hero and the sorceress stood holding their breath in shock. The giants managed to hiss one word before death: enemies. New people howled in the ecstasy of battle, and their power burst out like an explosion. A real war began between the giants and the new people. The giants waved their arms and tore down buildings, while the people counterattacked with terrible precision. The battlefield turned into hell. The giants threatened to annihilate everyone, but the crowd of new people launched a counterattack. The scene was gruesome, a slaughter with no end. Alio thought the plan had worked. He turned to Lum to say it was time to run, but froze. She was falling, and blood was flowing from the wound. In front of him stood a woman in a mask, the same one as before. She had just killed Lum. She coldly addressed the hero. Their disguise was revealed. They had been sensed back when they crossed the border. With a sneer, she asked what they hoped to gain by bringing giants here. It was a senseless stunt. Alio quietly but bitterly replied, if they knew everything, then why did they allow him to carry out the plan? After all, their people were dying. Did they not care? The woman answered that they had not even raised the alarm. Their warriors were strong enough to keep the situation under control. She was not interested in sympathy. They had more interesting amusements. For the new people, the sweetest amusement was to admire the torment and despair of those they considered inferior. They promised to make him watch as everyone he loved died. They demanded that he show fear, but the hero, since Kovo died, no longer thought about his own salvation. Rage boiled within him at his present self, who saved no one, and at his past self, who fled. It was the anger of humiliated humanity, and he remembered everyone: refugees, Paku, and fallen comrades. Suddenly, the face of a friend appeared before his eyes. The hero sharply removed the ribbon from his hair. He drew his sword, bowed his head, and asked everyone for forgiveness. This was where his personal battle began. The new people silently watched. The hero called his fairy assistant Kira. She flared with bright light, and a stream of light burst from Alio's body. The enemies immediately decided that this was a warrior from another world and already dreamed of how they would torture him. Alio cried once he used this technique against Yudo, but now it was his last chance. He was already tired of running. The world had changed, and it was time to fight. He remembered the oath he gave to Kylie. He would not let the enemies destroy people with impunity. The hero whispered a spell, and a golden storm rose over the city. The storm covered part of the city with a dome of light. The enemies stood confused and did not understand what kind of attack it was, while the whirlwind engulfed both the new people and the giants. Alio rushed into the very heart of the storm, cutting the enemies into pieces. His technique, fusion with the fairy, was not human. It dealt devastating blows. The explosive wave of power cleared his path through the ruins. The giants realized that the storm was created by a human. They tried to reach him but fell from his lightning-fast strikes. The new people understood that the hero controlled the light vortex, clearing the way, and suddenly he stopped. Children stood before him. At that moment, the enemies rushed from all sides, but suddenly a giant's foot intervened in the battle. It fell right between them. The blast wave threw everyone away, but the hero did not stop. He rushed into battle, pushing back the attackers, thinking, even if it is in vain, he will die here but will not retreat. He met every blow until the flash blinded everything around. When the glow faded, the storm subsided. The city of the new people stood frozen among the ruins. People with doll-like faces walked among the ruins and assessed the damage. Their leader received a report. The territory was cleared. The destruction turned out to be almost imperceptible, and when asked about the strange light, they answered briefly it was a human attack that did not cause serious damage. The new people thought that the giants were bioweapons of the old world, but quickly rejected this idea. Humans are not capable of that. Perhaps it is a new species born from mixed worlds, and they saw it sometimes as an enemy, sometimes as a toy, until suddenly they noticed something. Something huge was approaching from afar. One giant was tearing his skin, and tentacles were bursting out from there. A monster parasite appeared before the new people. They were burning with impatience and awaited new entertainment. Meanwhile, in the fortress, people were bustling, gathering supplies for the next campaign. Zalo, carrying a heavy load and helping comrades, suddenly raised his head. In the sky he saw a familiar shadow. The fairy Alio was returning to them. Penipene listened to Kira and tried to calm her. Zibai could not stand it and asked what she was saying. The fairy replied that the operation was completed. Kira reported, "A group of giants was led into the lair of the new people and destroyed there, and the people exploded with joy at the rescue." The mad plan worked. Grasp sighed with relief and whispered that everything succeeded. Hello stood aside, thoughtful. He decided to deal with the fate of the squad. Penipene replied that Kovo, Shox, Shidru, Bragent, and Jupiter died during negotiations with the giants, and Lum was killed by the new people, and everyone bowed their heads mourning the fallen. Paku said that Alio lost and probably ended up in a prison for the old and useless. Penipene conveyed the hero's words, under no circumstances try to save him. Jello was silent, clenching his fist, but pain burned in his eyes. Kayla noticed this. She wanted to follow him, but Zebai stopped her, saying that she could not go against a friend's will. They needed to give him time. Penipene silently watched as the hero walked away. Jello sat on the street, hunched and depressed. He thought about Alio. Tears welled up in his eyes, but his attention was drawn to children playing with a sword, laughing and repeating words they heard from their parents, as if everything would end well. The hero watched them, and a strange calm spread within him. This was what his friends had been fighting for. The ball rolled straight to him. The children anxiously apologized, and seeing that he had no hand, asked if it hurt. Jello suddenly remembered the battle with King Jati. Smiling, he replied that it was nothing and wanted to show them that everything was fine, but suddenly pain pierced his body. The frightened children ran away. The hero watched them go and whispered thanks to his friend for the life they had given to others. But suddenly he was pierced by a familiar dark energy, and he raised his head. Kiva, the demon who had been searching for him, was already approaching the fortress. His body became whole again. Even the severed hand had reattached. Jello hurriedly prepared for battle. The children begged to be allowed to bandage the wound, but he strictly ordered to run to Brother Zebai and say that the demon grandfather had come. The hero broke out beyond the fortress, and Kiva was already circling in the sky. When they faced each other, the demon said in a mocking tone that it was nice to see him again. The hero recognized the enemy and could not believe he had come alone. He proposed a deal. If he won, Kiva would never approach the fortress. The demon laughed but accepted the condition. He, though mockingly, promised to keep his word, then began to transform and declared that the hero would now pay for sending an army of machines against him. Jello became serious. A decisive battle was ahead. Like lightning, they clashed sword against claws. The hero launched a lightning-fast attack. A shard of his sword glowed and formed a shining blade. The demon noticed. Earlier the weapon trembled, now it was held without fear. Blow after blow, Kiva began to miss attacks, and blood splattered on the ground. Choking, the demon spat blood and roared, not understanding why it hurt after all. He had always considered it a game. His body distorted into its true form, and he cursed the warrior. The fight did not subside. Jello dodged, counterattacked, and slid across the ground like a shadow, while Kiva struck with such fury that stones burst from the earth. The hero maneuvered again, and with a powerful blow knocked the demon off his feet. He fell on his back. Jello jumped into the air, swung, and with all his might brought down the sword, but the demon dodged. Once defeat by the king instilled in the demon a fear of the unknown. But now another enemy stood before him. Jello, filled not with fear, but with rage, sorrow, and loss. All these emotions, anger, grief, helplessness, merged within him, and he gave himself fully to the battle. The demon was pierced by terror. This was true power. He realized, before him stood the only one who survived a fight with Jati. Kiva raised his hand, and Jello became alert. The demon snapped his fingers, and from behind the hill crawled an undead horde, an endless sea of rotten bodies. Kiva coldly ordered them, devour the hero, grind him to dust, so that even his name would disappear from this world. This was exactly what Jello expected. The demon ordered to leave his body and head for torture. He wanted to learn everything about the merging of worlds. He threatened fiercely, anyone who kills the hero without permission will die by his hand. The undead horde surged forward. The hero remembered Alio. He thought that if they fought together against the giants, there would be fewer casualties. His soul was swallowed by anger over his own weakness. He poured all his emotions into the blade of the sword. Jello challenged the entire undead, roaring that he would cut down anyone who dared to approach. But suddenly a voice sounded behind him. Someone ordered to throw grenades, and metal balls flew into the sky, exploding with smoke. Kayla stood on the wall and loudly called the hero. Jello turned around behind. The mages raised their staffs, casting spells. A powerful magical explosion covered the undead horde, and the mages, as one, formed a protective perimeter around the fortress. Meanwhile, Paku rushed to Jello, shouting, "Hold on." He flew into the fight, and with several powerful blows, smashed the enemies. Banging his head into one of the dead, he broke his skull, but immediately choked on a cough. The smoke from gas grenades stung his eyes, and Jello exclaimed, "What are you doing here?" Their foreheads touched, and they looked each other straight in the eyes. Paku said that the hero was a friend of Alio, and that they all gave their lives not in vain. Meanwhile, Kayla and Gyudo gave orders to their squads. Each remembering fallen comrades, Jello heard their voices, and his heart tightened. Paku shouted, "Wasting life is impossible. It is a betrayal of the memory of those who died." Kiva looked down, irritated by human stubbornness. He was tired of people constantly bothering him, so he ordered to destroy everyone except the hero. Jello, hearing Paku's words, quietly apologized. Now he cannot forgive himself for his helplessness. Paku silently agreed. He also could not forgive himself. They stood shoulder to shoulder together, as one force in battle. The demons sensed the appearance of another strong warrior, but coldly decided that even together they would not change the outcome. All the forces of the people fighting around were exhausted to the limit. They stood on the very edge of despair. While the fortress held, a council gathered in the tower, and Grasp became its head. There were also children who passed on the hero's words. Zebai explained why he entrusted the defense to Gyudo and Kylie, and that people from other worlds also joined the battle. Salmon recalled how Paku rushed into attack upon hearing about the enemy. The people fought to the last. These were the last crumbs of their strength. Every resident of the fortress gave their last. Even money and all supplies went to the defense. But soon everything became clear. They were trapped. Distracting the demons with other enemies would not work. Haji gloomily said that the sacrifices of Alio and his group were in vain. General Grasp cut off the argument, sharply reminded about the report mentioning weapons in space, and insistently asked for details. Grasp addressed Sua, who arrived from the world of heavenly monsters, and Salmon whispered, "What is space?" Sua explained, "These are unmanned satellites. They can be controlled from the Earth." Zebai was stunned by their technology. Sua clarified, "These devices can burn the enemy with incredible precision, but with such a number of opponents, the effect may be negligible," and Grasp noted the reason for their non-use is completely different. Sua explained, "There is a rule, the limit of safe power. If it is exceeded, the satellite will light up, and along with it, the people will be exposed." Salmon asked who exactly could detect them. Sua reminded that she herself asked about space, and with bitterness in his voice, added, "It's better never to know about this endless hell, the domain of their enemies." He said there is no threat more terrible than the Mardarians. Masayoshi intervened, mumbling that no one cares about their warnings. Action is needed. If the rules are followed, enemies will not come, but a masked man shouted that the risk still remains. Once Jupiter followed all protocols during the battle with the giants, and it did not help at all. Then Grasp ordered to activate the weapon at full power, and Sua swore, saying that they were listening to him with the wrong part. But the general and Zebai stood firm. They would face the enemies face to face. Meanwhile, the people were still desperately fighting, their forces melting before their eyes. The undead were approaching, and Hello was on the edge. Panic gripped the defenders. The fairies darted in the air in a helpless whirl, not knowing what to do. The hero, gathering the last crumbs of energy, rushed forward, and the sky suddenly flared up. A laser beam pierced the darkness, cutting through the ranks of the undead, and when the light touched Kiva, the demon flew away. A downpour of fire began, and the demon retreated, trying to understand what kind of attack it was. He felt no magic at all. The beams subsided. The demons were getting up, and the hero thought that the reign of light was over. Kiva laughed out loud. His laughter rang like an iron bell, mocking, confident in his superiority. But suddenly a wave cut through the air. Something huge flew past and fell nearby, raising a pillar of dust. The demon became alert. A sphere rested on the ground. Sua announced in a gloomy voice that the satellite was lost. The general asked again, "Have they arrived?" Sua confirmed. The mages hoped that the aliens would join with the undead, but Sua denied it. There would be no battle. And indeed, the sphere began to distort and change shape, while humans and demons watched this in horror. Suddenly, strange creatures appeared from it, disproportionate, with multi-layered eyes. They turned out to be Mardarians. The undead froze, intently examining the small creatures that had fallen from the sky. The aliens spoke in their native language, but neither humans nor demons caught a single sound. Taking advantage of the confusion, Hello rushed into attack. The demon deflected the blow and retaliated with a kick straight to the stomach. The hero fell, grimacing in pain. The demon, irritated by the distraction, muttered that even this would not help the human. Hello barely got up. His attack's weakened exhaustion was taking over. Kiva sarcastically praised him for his courage and skill, almost humming, "Well done," and charged into attack again. But suddenly piercing sounds pierced the air. Everyone pressed their hands to their ears. The demon froze. He roared at the aliens, demanding that they be silent. Kiva turned to them and coldly said that he did not know who they were or where they came from, but ordered not to interfere. Meanwhile, a meeting was raging in the fortress. They were desperately thinking about what to do. The people from the world of heavenly monsters grimly reminded, "The Mardarians cannot be defeated," Grasp replied. "The clash of demons and aliens will buy them time to develop a new plan." The people simply had no choice. The demons would have destroyed humanity anyway. Sua was outraged by such tactics, but the general replied firmly, "Now is not the time to think about morality. We must take advantage of every chance, even if it means a new war." The general said, "This is also a battle, only a question of what will happen faster, the destruction of humanity or its salvation." He fervently believed that people must find a way out at any cost. Meanwhile, the aliens issued their bizarre trills. Their language chirped like metal. Kayla froze, her heart tightened. Before her stood real beings from another world, and the hero from Paku felt the same shock, though for different reasons. Kiva, spitting curses, recalled. At first robots bothered him, and now aliens and rage flared up in him. He decided not to repeat mistakes. He rushed into battle form and released a powerful magic charge directly towards the aliens. The shockwave hit the very heart of the target. The ground trembled. The undead burst out with a cry of admiration, praising the power of their master. The demon sharply turned around, searching for the hero. But he was no longer there. Paku carried Hello on his back, making his way through the lava of the undead. The hero noticed that they had moved away from the fortress and now could not protect it, but Paku replied that this was the plan. While the demons chased him, they would draw the horde away from the walls, and Hello was surprised by his cleverness. The demon saw the escape and roared with rage, then unleashed another wave of magic, this time directly at the hero. The explosive force knocked Paku down, and they both rolled down, ending up under the pressure of the undead. Kiva was already about to finish them off, but suddenly noticed that the strange creatures were still alive after the blow. Surprised, the demon transformed again and tensely prepared for a fight when one of the aliens moved toward him. The small body flashed in motion. The strike hit the demon's solar plexus directly. Kiva spat blood. The blow was so powerful that the air around compressed and then exploded. The shockwave rolled all the way to the fortress and broke through part of the wall. The people in the tower barely managed to hide, and Zebai exclaimed in shock that it was probably a meteorite. In the dust, he spotted Kiva's body shattered and thrown into the ruins. Mages and undead instantly recognized their lord. A commotion rose in the ranks. They shouted that the strangers dared to touch the lord. The aliens' eyes flared, and a new wave swept across the field. The bodies of the undead were torn to pieces. The demons did not immediately understand what had happened. Hello noticed thin beams bursting from the creature's eyes. It was with them that it cut the enemies. The alien continued to emit metallic sounds, and the undead, maddened, charged like a wave, hoping to overwhelm him with numbers. But the creature only waved its hand, and another wave swept away hundreds of bodies like sand in the wind. Sua spoke with a trembling voice. "That's why I said these are the most dangerous creatures for all humanity." The alien continued cutting through the demon army, flexibly gliding in battle like a shadow. Sua added with emphasis in his voice that no one understands how they attack. They are too smart, too fast. One such is enough to destroy an entire fleet. And then near the fortress appeared exactly such a creature. One alien, and the entire army of undead was wiped off the face of the earth. Hello watched this, and in his soul spread the same feeling that once overwhelmed him near the Jati castle, boundless power before which a human is just a tiny speck of dust. The alien towered over the battlefield. He said something in his own language, then suddenly switched to human, calmly asked if he was heard. The undead froze, shocked that the enemy spoke. The creature said that their frequency matches the human one and addressed the demons. Those who can answer the question will remain alive, the rest will not. The demons roared with rage. The undead howled with rage, showering curses on the aliens. But they didn't even pay attention. They simply resumed the attack. Among themselves, they sharply discussed the monsters standing before them. Their main goal was to find out what was happening on this planet. They assumed it might be another experiment by the Earthlings. After consulting for a moment, the aliens turned around and headed back to where they came from, where this meat grinder began. Sua gloomily whispered that this was the end. For them, all living things here were just trash. Zeb looked at the wounded demon among the ruins. The mage only whispered, "It's too early to give up." The aliens continued cutting down the undead. Their attacks were so powerful that even the demons panicked. The fortress trembled from explosions and waves of energy. The walls cracked. People nervously looked around. The priest couldn't stand it and began to pray while his comrade pulled him back. Salmon worried about Paku, and Masayoshi grumbled about the fragility of the structure. People, especially women, were drowning in despair, It seemed to them that in other worlds they at least had a chance to survive. Meanwhile, the condition of the human king rapidly deteriorated. Baz, who was taking care of him, realized that people from other worlds were not protected from the curse at all. Their worst fears came true. Pain approached Kira. She was sitting, depressed and sad. He tried to cheer up the rabbit fairy, whispering that Alio was alive and she had to believe. Recalling the chocolate he was once offered, he wanted to share it, but the treat melted in his palm. He still tasted the remnants and offered them to Kira. She felt slight disgust but smiled with gratitude. Suddenly Pain became alert. The air smelled of danger, and he felt that something was wrong with the hero. Meanwhile, the wounded Kiva lay amid the debris and ashes. He felt that for the first time in his long life he was in real trouble. Once he destroyed human settlements, despised them, and all this came easily to him. But now there were robots, aliens, and heroes, and the world had turned upside down. His peaceful life was over, and he realized that the same fate awaited him as those he despised. A flash of light. Zebai was pouring magic into the demon, and the wounds began to heal right before his eyes. He understood that if you saturate the undead with energy, it can recover. Colleagues tried to stop him. They said the demon could kill them all. But Zebai replied that it was better for him to regain consciousness than to die next to them when the mage's powers ran out, and he activated the magic circle. One of the mages who was refusing him shuddered from the glow the circle worked. Kiva opened his eyes. Zebai sighed joyfully when he noticed the demon rising, but suddenly a huge paw swiftly reached for him. A powerful blow threw the mage aside, and the demon woke up and tore blazing flames from its chest. Zebai managed to cast a protective spell, but his comrades retreated in horror. The mage desperately begged the demon to calm down, but people screamed in panic. The Grasp squad decisively raised their weapons, aiming at the monster. Kiva looked at them with a mad gaze, and the people stood, not daring to take a step. The general only clenched his jaws, feeling that the demons possessed incredible vitality, and the demon's snorted sparks flew from his mouth. He was angered by human indulgence, and Zebai tried to direct his anger into another channel. The demon was annoyed that these weak creatures dared to have any plans. He barked that he could destroy them all instantly, and rushed at the mage. But at the last moment, Kiva sharply changed direction and, breaking through the roof, burst into the night. Zebai was praised for his ingenuity, but he himself knew that the chances of survival remained slim. The battlefield was strewn with undead corpses. One of the aliens approached a comrade and asked why interrogate those who no longer breathed, and he calmly replied, acting according to protocol. They needed to show who was in charge here, so they decided to interrogate the remaining living. Only 2 survived from the 1,000-strong undead army. One was already destroyed, and the aliens addressed the other with short, fragmented words, as if to a primitive creature. The demon could not withstand the pressure and broke down, dumping all his troubles on the people. And at that moment, Hello was dragging the wounded Paku away from the battlefield. One of the aliens sharply turned to them. Behind the wall, Kayla's squad's weapons were already aimed at him. They feared the monster was targeting the hero. Suddenly, an explosion tore through the wall. Kayla and Hello turned around, stunned by the shockwave. Alien ships emerged above the fortress. A voice cut through the loudspeaker, "All humans under fire." They insisted that those who survived would be able to tell the story of what happened, but Sua shouted for no one to believe their words. The hero understood that he had to act alone, but the attack had to happen at the perfect moment. The fortress was barely holding. The demons were defeated. Just as the aliens were momentarily distracted, Hello instantly gave the command to attack. But suddenly, a powerful blow fell on the creature. It was Kiva. The alien's neck snapped sharply from the force of the demonic strike, but surprisingly, he did not suffer serious damage. Kiva growled fiercely that last time he was humiliated, but now he would show his true power. Hello and Paku watched this, amazed. The alien coldly asked who this freak was, and mockingly said he was not going to remember this trash, because he would answer him immediately. Hello shouted, "Careful, beams!" And indeed the alien activated the weapon. The ground was cut by shining lines, and Kiva took a deep breath. And he exploded with a beastly roar. His voice stopped the stream of beams, slicing through them, and even the aliens froze for a moment, stunned. Kiva looked at the enemy and felt he could not handle it alone. He spat out a black flute, a signal to call the unit. While everyone stared at the demon, the sky suddenly flared. The alien ships began exploding one after another. His reinforcements flew to help elder demons, and they laughed mockingly at Kiva for calling for backup. They were the 3 commanders of the 11th Division, Shinso, Bikuk, and Appo. Kiva froze in surprise. They arrived so quickly, and they dryly said they came by Jati's order to check if he was alive, and these words humiliated the demon. But they were quickly calmed, saying the king was only interested in the aliens. Kiva cast a look at them full of hatred. Aliens only said that, on this planet, another type of strange creatures was discovered. The sides were tensely preparing for a new clash, and the air trembled with magical energy and electric fields. The demons released their techniques, but the aliens swiftly repelled every attack. Bikuk opened his jaws wide and tried to swallow one of them, but the alien dodged, gathered energy into a sphere, and shot at the winged one. The ball of light did not lag behind the demon until Oppo struck the alien from behind. The small body hit the ground with a dull thud. The demons tensely prepared for a massive attack. They unleashed colossal magical energy and aimed it directly at the alien. A deafening explosion raised a column of smoke, the fortress shook, and the demons tensely watched to see if the enemy was killed. But suddenly a beam burst out of the smoke. It pierced Bikuk, and then caught up with the rest of the demons. The alien coldly stated that these creatures are a lower form of life. Kiva lunged at him, but instead of a blow heard only, "Demons are not suitable for biological observation." The alien released an electric discharge, and it instantly covered everyone. He fell silent, staring intently. The demons, though scorched, were still alive, and this stunned him. He did not expect to see creatures capable of withstanding such a blow. Mages continuously gave energy to the demons, restoring their strength. Zebai shouted not to give up because otherwise everyone would perish, both they and the people. The demons felt a powerful flow of magic from the fortress and decided that Kiva had tamed the people. But he only grumbled that it was their survival strategy and ordered to focus on the enemy in front of them. One of the mages asked Zebai what they would do next because if the demons won, they would attack them too, even despite the help. And Zebai calmly replied that then they would simply evacuate. All the demons together transformed and rushed at the alien, who only glanced surprised and quietly whispered, "This is nonsense." The large teleportation circle was supposed to transfer objects between distant points, but its power worked only within a certain radius. If the terrain at the destination changed, the magic could fail. All circles were connected to each other, forming a single magical channel. The castle, towering in the heart of the fortress, was the pulse of this system. The large circle, a highest-level spell that could transfer a whole crowd of people, but its use required superhuman strength and always carried a risk. Countless mages directed the spell upward, intensifying the glow of the outline. Zebai said he was starting to recite the formula and placed the defense against demons on the shoulders of his comrades. He emphasized, if they lost this battle, humanity would disappear. They only needed to buy a little time to activate the circle and evacuate the people, while meanwhile a battle of demons and aliens raged in the sky. General Grasp suddenly remembered. During the giant invasion, this method had already been considered, but then it was rejected due to the risks. He was told that this circle was not like the others. The large one could transfer people anywhere. But due to destruction and landscape shifts, the coordinates had become inaccurate. Teleportation could suddenly open a portal right into the enemy's lair, into the desert, or even into the sky. No one knew for sure. Grasp objected. This was too dangerous, especially with the wounded and children, because all these biomes were exactly those from which people had fled here. The mage agreed, but suggested reassessing the situation. Once more staying was like sentencing oneself to death. The fortress was bursting at the seams. The walls were breached and buildings were burning, while demons still fought aliens in the sky. The blonde mage bitterly remarked that any other place could be safer, and proposed discussing where they could flee. A tall woman said bitterly that in the world of giants there were no safe zones. A little girl added that all known settlements had been swallowed by nature. Someone reminded that probably even the mechanical front bases were destroyed. A person from the celestial world silently lowered their eyes. One man barely whispered about a place where people still lived together, but quickly fell silent. Yet Zebai heard, and hope ignited in his heart. He asked the old man about that place. He replied, "It is an old church turned into a bandit's lair. People live there, but they are dangerous. They do not kill, but enslave." Hearing this, Su and Zebai raised their eyes to the breached roof. Through it, a battle in the sky emerged. They exclaimed that even such a place was 100 times better than death, and the old man only quietly apologized. Grasp thanked him, asked to show the location on the United Lands map, and immediately gave the order to prepare for relocation. The lawless world was to become the new refuge. Sua ominously joked that if natural enemies were humans themselves, then the conditions were almost ideal. The girl reminded not to relax and ordered to put weapons on safety before teleporting. Zebai began activating the large circle, and at that moment his staff suddenly cracked. Exhausted, he felt that magical powers might not be enough. People from the world of the Great Tree handed him a vial and extract from the roots of the World Tree, the true source of pure life energy. After drinking it, the mage felt his body ignite with power. It was the only vial, but its energy was enough to complete the ritual. The blonde mage sent a message to Yudi. He is activating the circle and will teleport everyone inside the fortress, asked to wait for the right moment and call Hello and others. They asked him can he manage alone. The Great Circle required incredible strength and precision, only commanders could control it. The mage with the mohawk was cramping from exhaustion, but Zebai assured he could handle it even without Hello's help. At that very moment, the Midrian streaked across the sky and struck several demons at once, tearing the air with lightning. One of the demons shouted something offensive and let out a demonic roar, but the Midrian deftly dodged the attack. Moreover, it directed an energy stream straight into the fortress inside. They immediately sensed danger. When the strike was almost reaching its target, Zebai activated the protective barrier, the Great Soul Shell. The fortress walls lit up with glowing runes. A tall, dark-skinned woman looked at the barrier with admiration, and Suda asked how long it would hold. The mage replied, a maximum of 10 seconds, and added that the worst had happened. He had exhausted all remaining power. From now on, the teleportation circle no longer obeyed him. He could not activate it. Meanwhile, in the midst of the fierce battle, a man in a gas mask appeared Baz from the world of the destructive curse. He whispered quietly, life against life, it's simply wonderful. Suddenly, Pain flew out from behind him and roared, calling hello. Baz looked back and asked coldly, why was he here and what could possibly harm him? Pain replied that he sensed the smell of terrible danger. Hello whispered in surprise, what could be worse than this hell? But at that very moment, a projectile rushed at them. The hero instantly grabbed the ferry and jumped to avoid the strike. Midrian Gallia looked back and asked if they were already suffocating from fear, while the commanders of the 11th Demon Division were breathing heavily, completely exhausted and powerless. Another Midrian, looking at this scene, suggested stopping the fight. It was pointless to waste time on creatures who did not want to talk, so they decided to look for other targets. He barely managed to say the phrase when the whole sky was pierced by the order, stop the battle. One of the Midrians pressed a button on his chest and disdainfully asked, are they really going to stand against them? With a roar, a giant ship rose into the sky, and from its interior came a cold, metallic voice. Earth Cleansing Team activate protocol. People and demons froze. Everyone gasped at the incredible size of the vessel. Commander Kiva was eager to immediately inform his king, because an enemy appeared who dared to challenge even him. Midrian decisively gave the order, prepare to fire. He lowered his hand from the control panel and sharply gave the command, fire. But barely had the ship opened fire when a giant creature attacked it. The Midrians froze. They could not believe their eyes. Everyone, both people and demons, froze in silence. The world paused for a moment. Pain, with a trembling voice, fearfully confirmed it was the same smell he had sensed before, the most dangerous on the entire battlefield. With a roar, a giant creature burst to the surface, a true living disaster from the world of the Great Calamity. Unemployed Masayoshi, seeing the monster of his world, exploded with curses and muttered under his breath that no one heard his warnings because of this racket and stinking explosions. The monster named Zai Kyuzan, a catastrophe that nullifies everything, raised its head to the sky. Its body shone as if it were the embodiment of destruction itself. And the world exploded. A powerful wave swallowed everything around, engulfing the sky, the earth, and hope for salvation. In the world of machines, robots noticed a powerful anomaly and immediately began analyzing it. All collected data was instantly transmitted to the mother, the central core of consciousness. The giants felt the explosion like an earthquake. The ground shook beneath their feet. In the world of tyranny, the people did not even move, and the creature sitting atop the pyramid with a body resembling a cross. She slowly opened her eyes. Creatures from the world of the great evil moved toward the fortress, and the Midrians watched as their living ship, despite its colossal size, calmly moved and maintained its own weight, something they had never seen before. Midrian Pao stated that mass and tissue density were only secondary parameters. Their bodies could compress information, and this was what distinguished them from lower creatures. He was asked if he had seen the ship's fragments. Pao briefly confirmed and set off forward. He decisively decided to strike directly at the brain of the creature, named Zai Kyuzan. Hovering over the giant head, he tore a strange sound from himself, Iviv, and launched into an attack. The tiny figure of Pao was drowning before the body of the monster, rising like a mountain. He crashed directly into the monster's head, but the body bounced back and he slammed into the ground, raising a cloud of dust. The monster remained unharmed. All the Midrians watched this with stone faces. Pao was stuck in the ground, stone cracked around him. His body seemed like a tiny insect on the edge of an abyss. While the Midrians discussed what they had seen, demon fire rained down on them. Kiva, leading the attack, shouted loudly so that the enemies would not dare to flee. Meanwhile, a giant creature was approaching the fortress. Panic rose inside. Everyone was sure it would grind them to dust. The human forces were on the edge. In despair, they turned to Zebai seeking a way out, and he quickly assessed the situation. Without magic, teleportation does not work, and fleeing on foot is impossible because demons lurk behind the walls. Jello, breaking through the ruins, cleared the way, desperately trying to reach the mage Giddy to check his condition. He ordered Pain, tell the brother and others that he will join later. First, he will help the mage from the eastern squad. Pain asked where exactly to flee. Yudu was informed that the blonde mage began activating a large teleportation circle, and he instantly realized. The barrier had half exhausted him, and the mage was probably panicking, so Yudu decided to replace Zebai and complete the activation himself. Jello asked again if it was really instead of Zebai, and he was confirmed. The mage began reciting the formula, and blood flowed from his body. The hero rushed to stop him, but the mage did not react. He was on the verge of completion, only a little was left. She shouted, "Pain, the process is almost complete." But suddenly Kira appeared before them, a fairy and assistant of the 19th hero from the world of evil spirits. She suggested using fusion with Jello, and the hero froze with surprise. Is it possible, since she is the fairy Alio? Kira only replied that now is not the time to argue, action is needed. She smiled and whispered a phrase in a language only Pain understood, after which she suddenly flew upward. The lady shouted for her not to do this, but Kira only repeated her words. She wants to meet Alio again, and as soon as she disappears, he will immediately feel her presence. The fairy's body suddenly shone. It became the embodiment of pure, highly concentrated magical energy. Magic is the fusion of life. She sacrificed herself, turning her soul into the last flash of energy to pass it to Giddy. He began activating the magic circle again, shouting to the hero, "Go immediately, otherwise you won't get into the portal and will stay here forever." Jello replied that then he would stay with them, but the mage suddenly cut off his words and exclaimed that. Jello suddenly remembered how in childhood, until the age of 10, he wet the bed every night. In the camp, it was on everyone's lips, although no one asked. His brother constantly mentioned him and never stopped. He spoke about the amazing brother, the one who would definitely become a hero, but was too kind for war and always ready to lend a shoulder. The mage cut off his memories, noticing that little energy remained. "Time is running out," he said, and reminded that the hero's brother was an outstanding mage. It was thanks to his imperfect magic that the summoning plan was realized, and his ideas and spirit inspired everyone. When the Demon King defeated the younger brother, the mage saw such a face for the first time. It even showed relief. Smiling, he pleaded with Jello not to extinguish his own light, but to live. A shard of metal stuck in his side, blood flowed down his cloak. Clenching his teeth, the hero scooped up the fairy in his arms and dashed off. The mage, watching them go, whispered that he was exactly as they had described him. Magical symbols flared above the fortress. The great teleportation circle came to life, and demons, aliens, and even monsters from other worlds immediately noticed it. Zebai froze in surprise when he saw the glow. Realizing it was Yuda's work, he immediately ordered everyone to enter the circle. Someone shouted that Pakaya was still behind the walls, but Zebai decisively replied, "Move forward, otherwise the chance will be lost." Two brothers rushed towards each other. The blonde mage shouted that the teleport would work any moment, and Hello stretched out his hand and called him loudly. The fortress was already lifting off the ground. The mage staggered, falling, but remained alive. People grabbed the last chance to escape from these deadly lands, and Gaia from the world of heavenly monsters suddenly felt the space distort. She decided that fluctuations were the appearance of a molehill and rushed to stop the teleport. Jello rushed forward, pushing off the wall, and managed to grab Zebai by the hand. He blocked the blow, but his brother did not retreat, reached out to him and called him by name. The teleportation worked at the very moment when the hero was still standing outside the circle. In the whirl of chaos, the demon seized the moment and struck the celestial monster. Jello was caught on the fortress wall and looked at the empty city. The fairy, with anxiety in her voice, said that because of the alien invasion, they did not manage to get into the portal. The hero simply sighed with relief. The main thing is that the rest survived. The fairy exploded with anger. "How can you be happy? They remained in hell among enemies without any chance." But suddenly a familiar voice sounded from behind the wall. "What? You weren't taken either. You are so slow." That was Pakaya. He said he did not feel any allied energy nearby, had just saw the light and acted instinctively. When asked about the escape, he only shrugged. He knows nothing. Hello anxiously asked if others were safe and what to do next. Pakaya sharply pointed at a figure in the distance, a person being attacked by two armed enemies. Two from their group reacted instantly and dealt with the attackers. The person in the gas mask admitted that they did not notice their approach. Others reproached him for carelessness. The hero suggested checking the fortress. Perhaps someone else survived, but they objected, saying there was no point. Baz said that he himself went beyond the circle's range and saw. The fortress was empty, no signs of life except theirs. He pointed to two bodies nearby dead, the other still breathing, and suggested using the latter. He raised the artifact, a thing from the ancient civilization of the world of Ruinan, directed its piercing beam at the body in which a spark of life still flickered. Suddenly, the vessel for melting souls changed. It transformed into a strange mechanism that stunned everyone present. Baz calmly stated that he was leaving this place. Whoever wanted could get inside. The team, though fearful, still climbed into the mechanism created by the artifact. Suddenly, the device moved, and Pakaya was almost thrown outside. He barely held on, cursing. The fairy grumbled irritably that Baz didn't care about anyone, which is why he had no friends. The hero sharply pointed forward. Demons were rapidly approaching them. He ordered to fight back while he himself steered the mechanism through the crowd of enemies. The artifact, with a ramming strike, broke through the ranks of opponents, threw some to the ground, and the rest had to be destroyed in hand-to-hand combat. Despite fierce resistance, they managed to break through. But suddenly the mechanism sharply thudded against the ground, raising a cloud of dust. From the overload, they were almost thrown off balance, but Pakaya managed to keep his balance and save everyone inside. The cause of the impact turned out to be simple. The demon's body fell with a crash right in front of them. He opened his eyes and, full of surprise, saw a familiar face before him. The demon and Hello recognized each other. Hostile flames of the past flared in their eyes. The demon aimed straight at the hero's chest and threw a strike, but Pakaya shouted and rushed forward. His leg struck the demon. It flew far away. A strange, spiky object fell from the monster's body and quietly groaned in the dust. Kiva, out of breath, rose from among the debris and watched as the transport with the team drove away, leaving him amid the ruins. Suddenly, loud thunder explosions tore the sky. Kiva raised his head and saw a new threat. The Midrians from the celestial monsters could not believe their eyes. Their combat miniships could not even scratch the skin of Daikokuzen from the world of great evil. They realized that the monster did not notice them. It unleashed all its fury on the giant ship. The Midrians decided to postpone the attack. They still needed to gather data and prepare properly. They who so despised this planet were forced to admit. It turned out to be a worthy opponent, so it would have to be subdued. Meanwhile, one of the flying demons noticed that the humans stopped transmitting magic and ordered a retreat. He did not finish speaking and was torn apart by the aliens' gunfire. The aliens mercilessly exterminated the demons, striving to get rid of this intrusive evil as quickly as possible. Kiva watched as his comrades were torn to pieces one by one. The demons screamed, called out to the generals, but already felt inevitable doom. The generals fell, their voices faded. The army was defeated. There was no strength to flee, only the end lay ahead. In the death throes, Kiva remembered everyone he had fought side by side with and marveled. People are mad. They fought even when defeat was obvious. And only after living 250 years did he meet an enemy who truly surpassed him and finally understood. Being brave turned out to be harder than he had ever imagined. Demon bodies lay scattered around, and Midrians circled above the sky. Kiva involuntarily thought that perhaps those people he had once killed also saw something similar in their last moments. With a bitter smile, he decided in his last seconds to repeat their reaction, no matter how ridiculous it might look. Kiva unleashed all his power. A storm of dark energy rose around him. Before rushing into battle, he barely whispered, "Now everything depends on King Jyoti." And with a final roar, he vanished in a blaze of fire, throwing himself into his last fight. Meanwhile, the team inside the artifact was tensely discussing how to escape and how to reach a safe place where they could meet with Zebai. Suddenly, a man in a gas mask said dryly, "The fuel is finished." Panic gripped everyone. They had taken only a few steps, and the monster still loomed behind. A giant creature turned its head directly towards them, and its eyes flashed red. The team broke free from the mechanism and ran at full speed, escaping inevitable death. Hello, gasping for breath, thought with horror about his brother had he managed to escape. The teleportation finally ended, and Zebai opened his eyes. They found themselves amid sandy dunes near ruined houses and a palace. This was the lawless world, a place where civilizations once existed, but now looting and murders prevailed. After the transition, some sighed with relief at their rescue, others stood confused and looked around, and the blonde mage could not understand whether his brother had made it into the circle. But he instantly controlled his emotions, forced himself to calm down, and ordered to search for a safe base. One of the mages reported anxiously. The king's condition was worsening. Treatment was ongoing, but magical energy was almost depleted. Zebai immediately recalled the curse from the world of destructive blight. He asked the representatives of the world of the Great Tree to share the world's source, but they replied that the supply was exhausted. and the unemployed man grumbled that it was not worth spending the last elixir on the king. He noticed a settlement nearby and suggested heading there to rest at least a little. Just having escaped death's grasp, they watched in shock as people in that settlement fought each other. Those who barely escaped the demon's claws found themselves in a world where the greatest enemy of man is man himself. Before them stretched the territory of a gang, the stronghold of the lawless world. During a fight, slimy tentacles suddenly grew from the body of one of the warriors. His opponent screamed in horror. The next moment, the man's body tore from the inside, and a monster devoid of any human features crawled out of him. Losing his mind, the mutated man suddenly lunged at everyone around. The blonde mage realized with horror. Before him was not a demon, but a man mutilated by mutation. People from the lawless world burned him with a flamethrower without any hesitation. The unemployed man was so surprised that he staggered bandits even kill their own, and he said it was better not to interfere. But someone from the group noticed a girl in chains. Seeing this, he shot at the attackers and freed the captive. He turned off the fire in stun mode and said that this was enough for the people. Although they are natural enemies, they are still people, and added that he was already beginning to envy this world. The cartel, a representative of the parasite world, decisively warned everyone, "Do not approach the girl, she is infected." The body of the man standing nearby began to be covered with tumors. He was also infected. General Grasp recognized the cartel's symbol and instantly remembered that fire is effective against parasites. The cartel replied that this was not destruction, but isolation according to their rules. The infected are isolated for 48 hours and observed. Pio, also from the parasite world, supported her and whispered, "Parasites lay eggs in the victim's body and can enter through the mouth, skin, or fluids. A person often does not even suspect infection until death matures inside." Zebai, not at all sure, asked if it was possible to reliably detect the infected, and the girl from the parasite world coldly replied, "Symptoms itching, fever, and aggression are just a hint, and an accurate diagnosis is almost impossible." Unemployed Masayoshi said that he would have to leave the girl, otherwise they would all die, and Mika was outraged. She called him heartless, since the child was in trouble. He replied that she was still too young to understand the responsibility in case of infection, apologized to everyone and sighed, "Forgive me, sister." His younger sister shouted that he was a coward who couldn't even lift a finger, but she was sharply interrupted, reminded that there were already enough problems. She turned to the rest and asked, "What to do?" Immediately several voices burst into one: the girl must be saved. Most spoke in favor of rescue, but the officer noticeably remarked, "Among them are the wounded, so the risks must be weighed." Zebai asked to wait. The decision had not yet been made, and the general confirmed that acting without threat assessment was impossible. At that moment, someone shouted that the prisoner was wounded, and blood flowed from her hand. People from the world of giants, full of pity, moved towards her. They said that in their world everything was simpler. When someone is in trouble, others immediately go to help, without hesitation or reflection. Cartel tried to stop them, but they promised, after the rescue, they would keep their distance. The officer nodded. The decision was indeed humane. The blonde mage asked, "Is isolation really the only way to protect oneself from parasites?" Pio pulled out 2 capsules and told Cartel that silence only undermines trust. It is better to tell now. She asked if he was sure. Antiparasitic capsules of 2 types, white prophylactic. While their substances circulate in the blood, the parasite does not dare to penetrate the body, black poisonous. If infection has already occurred, the carrier drinks them to kill both themselves and the parasite inside. Apparently, not only they hide the truth. True trust must be earned. This takes time. The officer did not give the capsules to the rescuers, explained that he told only to be honest, because once people of his world killed each other because of them. "If they get infected," said the girl, "let them not hesitate." Giants moved toward the girl, and everyone suddenly wondered what would Hello do in their place. Zebai answered himself Hello would rush to save without hesitation, but his thoughts were suddenly interrupted by an urgent call. The king came to his senses, grabbed his chest, and hoarsely whispered something about the man in black. The words suddenly stopped and the heart froze. People decided he meant someone from the world of the curse, but they did not even notice his absence. Probably he stayed with Hello. The king's body suddenly twitched. Convulsions began. People stepped back, and those who arrived from the world of parasites immediately understood what was happening. They shouted, "Do not approach. If his blood touches anyone, infection is inevitable." A parasite crawled out of the monarch's mouth, leaving a bloody trail behind. People froze in shock. They considered it a curse, not a living infection. The blonde mage created a cubic barrier around the king. He knew, if he did not isolate him, everyone would die. A large tumor grew on the monarch's body. It suddenly burst, and a parasite sharply jumped out from there. Drops of blood splattered on Zebai. The parasite lunged at him, but the mage shouted a spell and icy storm bound the creature. The frozen parasite crumbled into small icy pieces. As soon as the barrier disappeared, people rushed to the mage. Seeing that his clothes were stained with blood, they immediately became wary. Suspicion of infection only grew stronger. Suddenly, parasites began to burst out of the body of the girl they had just saved. They were breaking out even from the bodies of the killed bandits. The infection had already spread. The girl began to change right before their eyes, her body distorted. Numerous eyes and a giant maw appeared. A grim officer from the world of parasites said that they had suspected the infection from the very beginning. The monster attacked those standing nearby, leaving them wounded. Only Salmon remained intact. Everyone panicked and rushed for their weapons. One of the fighters asked for permission to shoot, but he was forbidden. They feared injuring the girl who remained somewhere inside the monster. Zebai snapped and shouted to Pio to throw him the capsules. In response, they heard that the white ones were already useless. The infection had occurred. But the mage replied, "I need the black ones." The capsules suddenly flew straight into his hands. Whispered the spell Boots of Speed and dashed forward. The veins on the hands burst. Strength was exhausted. Zebai stood between the monster and the comrades and decisively ordered everyone to retreat. He admitted that he might already be infected, so he had to act alone. The girl, trembling, began to retreat. She thought that she was the only miserable one here, but while she was floundering, 2 had already died. The monster lunged at the blonde mage, and he instantly tried to create a wave of fire, but the staff did not work. The magical energy was depleted. He was falling, and consciousness was slowly fading. In his thoughts, he begged for only one thing: let at least his brother survive, even if he himself dies. Suddenly, a command sounded: open fire. A burst of flame hit the monster, and its body instantly ignited. A gang of bandits on motorcycles and trucks drove onto the scene. They doused the mutant with streams of fire from flamethrowers. After the attack, the monster was charred and fell. The newcomers froze, their eyes full of astonishment. They could hardly believe it. The bandits saved one of them. Several bandits approached the wounded Zebai. Among the fugitives, disputes flared up. Someone whispered that these wild people might not be so bad, they are just trying to survive too, while others insisted, "Do not trust them, better observe from afar." Someone hotly objected, "Bandits do not care about others' lives. They will just chain everyone." But still, unlike demons, these are humans. You can talk to them, and these conversations and disputes divided all those who were still standing. Salmon approached Zebai. He was breathing heavily. The cartel roared that he was covered in infected blood, and if she touched him, she would also become a carrier of parasites. One of the bandits grabbed the mage by the collar, lifted him, and mockingly threw him to the leader. "Look, a weakling, yet he clutches his staff as if it were his life." The leader replied that he had seen this before, saying it might come in handy, and ordered to take him to the headquarters. Those who heard froze in horror. They knew who it was. Before them stood Kekikai, commander of the Special Assault Unit, now head of the gang. He was notorious for taking everything useful, not saving, but mercilessly using, torturing, and discarding bodies as soon as they lost value. Meanwhile, the rest argued about the fate of the infected mage. Someone decisively stated, "Do not approach him." A woman in uniform coldly cut in that he must be left alone, otherwise the infection will spread. Another asked if he could be saved and heard briefly, "No, the infected is already an enemy," and the general inquired about armor, but was told the parasite would penetrate everywhere. People from the world of New Terrania decided to go to him themselves. One said that they were worthless anyway, they had nothing to lose. An officer from the parasitic world objected that the infected could not be saved, but another cut in that Zebai was still alive. Volunteers insisted there was no time and would go despite the ban, and the senior commander only remarked that in decisive moments ordinary people often act most bravely. A few daredevils approached the half-ruined building, and one of them said that they must enter and that for this, perhaps, they would be thanked even in heaven. In a remote block, prepared fighters waited in armor. One of the bandits noticed them and froze in surprise, but the commander raised his hand. The order to clear the square sounded harshly, and his men instantly aimed fire on everything that moved. Blood and dust soared into the sky, people fell under fire, and amid the chaos, a muscular warrior with dark skin and shorts carried a prisoner heavily on his shoulders, breaking through the whirl of events unfolding around. He instantly understood. This was an attack, the work of friends of those who were kidnapped. Fire and screams merged into chaos, and old panic and distrust again forced people into the roles of hunters and victims simultaneously. The Novoterranians rushed to save Zebai. One of them was hit by a bullet, but even that did not move the bandits. They ordered him to step back and declared that this person was only prey to them, an object, not a being with the right to life. Others rushed forward, pushing aside the gawker. picked up the mage and carried him to the transport, sprinkling passing words about what they saw and understood determination to save overcame the fear of fire. Their transport fighters resembled the technology of the new people, simple in design, rough but reliable. Engines roared, the team sped off into the dust, leaving behind a trail of smoke and chaos. They took off in these simple machines with tense, strained faces. They rushed to a safer shelter, carrying with them fragile Hope and the wounded mage. The old officer gloomily remarked that this maneuver was pure nonsense and foretold their quick plunge into chaos. They rushed into battle first and now were stuck on the bandit convoy that was advancing on them like a swarm. Various machines rushed at them, roaring and thundering like mad bees, and the leader of the assault squad only smiled. He had long dreamed of seeing other worlds and their toys, and now greedily devised a plan to take everything. Kekikai shouted about trophies and supplies. In his eyes burned a predatory curiosity for new technologies. Everything that moved and had value fell under his right of seizure. The bandits screamed about destruction and looting, and the general instantly gave the order to deploy a smoke screen, a temporary veil behind which one could hide and maneuver. In the thick smoke, people from other worlds sought shelter. New tyrants arrived and claimed that Zebai's condition was extremely severe, while the aliens tried to cope with the wounded and find refuge in the nearest house. Wounded and with broken equipment, the aliens could not quickly leave the place or break away from the pursuers, so they broke into the nearest shelter and waited it out. They needed time to regroup. But the old man shouted from the threshold, "Don't go into that house, it's unstable." And at that very moment the roof tore off, the building began to crumble, ready to bury under the rubble anyone who stepped inside. He explained, "These ruins are held together by the skeleton of the old world on the remnants of structures that survived the apocalypse and the merging of worlds, so every step inside could cause a collapse." The younger sister of the unemployed man looked into the distance and screamed with all her might, "Run to that forest that was visible on the horizon." Someone recognized it. "It's the Red Forest, a place with a bad reputation and unknown risks." One of those present warned it's better not to go there, because the forest has its own laws. Another already stopped, raised his hand and warned about invisible traps and hidden threats among the roots. Sabava from the world of the Great Tree suggested doing otherwise. She would plant the root of the world tree right here to reinforce the structure and give a chance to hide from the collapse and enemy fire. She stuck a living cutting into the ground, watered it, and the root began to grow wildly. It wrapped around the walls and supports, forming a living support that strengthened the building and allowed people to run inside. People, holding their breath and watching with amazement as the plant rapidly grew, realized these roots were not at all like the ones they knew. But still, the plan worked. The house would not fall immediately, and everyone rushed inside to hide. Miko was horrified, noticing that Masayoshi was watching from afar. Her eyes narrowed with tension. She considered him frivolous, but now it was more important not to blame but to act. Zura shouted, asking if they had any powerful weapons that could scare off the bandits. But they answered that the mage's energy was almost gone, and most of the weapons remained in the fortress. Resources were catastrophically lacking. The unemployed man suggested calling orbital laser weapons and setting them up so that the aliens would not see the beam. But he was reminded of the ban. The satellite system would not allow hitting people. Rules and technology stood above desires. He, somewhat indignantly, said that this place seemed like paradise because here one could negotiate with people. He himself decided to stay with the group because separation in these conditions meant quick death. Someone shouted, "Don't quarrel. There are too many bandits here. Nothing is visible through the smoke. Energy is scarce. Dispersion will mean defeat, so we need unity and minimal risks now." In the world of parasites, attacking people is a crime. The cyborg coldly added that they lack soldiers, and internal conflicts will only fuel chaos, so discipline is more important than emotions now. The general slowly nodded, considered all arguments, and announced, "First we will try to negotiate, and only if the talks fail Kayla will take command and use forceful measures." And at that moment, a ringing laugh sounded from beyond the door. The same girl who laughed earlier now loudly expressed contempt for the idea of negotiating with bandits, saying it was pathetic and fatally naive. Whoever counts on this is already doomed to death. The unemployed man ironically nudged the mage and offered to go with him if he was afraid. Suda, noticing with surprise that Masayoshi had taken one of the mages, froze. Anxiety for the future appeared in her eyes. The bandits, laughing, thrown into a furious rage, rushed forward and howled that they would take everything from everyone to the last thread. Their voices rang with greed. And for a moment it seemed that only those with strength and cunning would survive. Shots thundered overhead, bullets screwed into the ground, not allowing the enemies to advance. People warned. The bandits were already in the sights of weapons from other worlds, and although those weapons could wipe them off the face of the earth, Their owners do not seek to mock the weak. They were ordered to retreat if life still meant anything. The general and the gang leader exchanged glances, and Grasp silently hoped the enemy would come to their senses. The gang leader doubted. He did not believe that they had escaped from the Red Forest. How, he said, could other fools pass through the fortifications of ruins and roots of the world tree? Energy cannons exploded with red light, and the mages created only a dim glow and empty rumble without fire or thunder. No energy? Then they are bluffing, the leader said. He noticed that the weapons were aimed only at the legs. They fear sin, so they will not dare to shoot. And at that very moment the crowd surged forward. Ahead ran a man shouting that reinforcements had arrived. Kayla recognized the voice Masayoshi, and at that moment he ordered the major to use the invisibility spell. The unemployed man shouted that the territory was under control, and as if passing sentence, named the forces. 3,000 soldiers under the command of Colonel Bloody Bath, General Lamech Baylord, and Admiral Bulesser. The generals smiled in agreement. The balance of power had shifted. Some of the bandits retreated fearing the enemy had numerical superiority. Others, furious with rage, promised to kill everyone, and some tried to hold them back. The leader pondered and asked what magic they used. If explained, he would retreat, because he suspected that something more than it seemed was hidden behind this. Finally, the bandits rolled back. Some fled. Others, like ghosts, vanished into the smoke. Everyone already knew they would return with reinforcements. A plan had to be made while there was time. The first thing that came up: infection. Zebi apologized, but he was stopped. He saved people and did not even suspect that he would encounter parasites in this mixed world where anything was possible. Someone asked if he regretted his choice. Silence fell like a heavy curtain. An insect sat on a tree and fluttered its wings as if mocking. Meanwhile, the hero's group pressed themselves under the roots of a giant tree. They chewed giant insects, whispering about how they miraculously escaped the monsters, but again found themselves in a dangerous zone. But now they had food. They wondered where the others had teleported, maybe to the opposite side of the planet. Payne suggested looking for other heroes. The idea seemed sound. If earlier they pushed enemies against each other, now strong allies could save them. Pakia said he knew someone from his native village, incredibly strong, but the ground shifted and the road became uncertain, though he remembered the direction, and the man in black muttered that they would die 100 times before they got there. The hero answered confidently, as if it were a fact. Since he is a friend, that means reliable. His name was Gigatilla, and now their path led directly to him. In the wild lands, the robots encountered many forms of organic life. Notice contact with 2 lower types and unknown insects began attacking them. Danger level 3. The report was brief and tense. Save the data, transmit to the mother, activate the liquidation program. An object rapidly approaching was detected. Giant crows attacked the robots, tearing them with claws and beaks. Confirmed, attack by unknown birds, danger level 4. Evasion program activated, but it was ineffective for the crows. The metal drones were just shiny flies. Below, beneath the surface, giant fish devoured the giants just as ants devour small creatures. The Hello group realized, even enemies turn into prey, against them nature itself. Only distracted for a moment and you will be eaten. You must run fast. One member of the group in a gas mask noticed that the air here was surprisingly rich and life diverse. Payne shouted that now was not the time to admire everything around. Breath danger, and the smell of death hovered in every breath. And then heavy footsteps began to sound from the forest. Something huge was approaching, and everyone rushed into shelter. A little boy opened a hidden hatch among the roots and gestured for them to come inside. As soon as they hid under the roots, something gigantic passed heavily above them, and the ground trembled. Everyone immediately understood. The child had just saved their lives. They asked in surprise if people really lived here. The boy replied that they were not from the green forest and that he was seeing strangers for the first time. Many predators gathered by the water every year, so it was better to talk at home. It was safer there. They crawled through a narrow tunnel that resembled an anthill. These passages were dug by the boy's older brother, a secret network connecting the settlement and forest areas. Once water and fruits were carried through it. Upon learning about the guests, the old woman, the boy's grandmother, asked her grandson to introduce them. He is Nuki Zumi. He lived with his grandmother and older brother. Introducing himself, he noted that there was too much space here for 3. The child explained that there used to be a settlement here, but everyone, tired of constant fear, disappeared. After the worlds merged, the balance was destroyed. Even the green forest now teems with monsters. And the fairy added that it was so scary here that demons died like ants, so it was better for everyone to move on. The boy in the bird mask asked who the demons were. He said that natural order ruled in the green forest, the law of the food chain, and in the red, blue, and black forests, Humans did not even have the right to step because they were the weakest creatures and should not seek too much freedom. And outside the forest, everything is completely different, the hero quietly added. Nuki's older brother, Shirakami, was a gatherer. He immediately understood who their guests were and sent his brother for kindling. He asked what they had told the child when he heard nothing. In response, he learned that they had arrived from another world. The man in the gas mask began scanning his property and suddenly saw something alarming. He sharply pulled out the syringe and strictly ordered not to touch anything. He injected himself and explained, "This is an antibiotic with nanobots from his world, capable of restraining the infection." His hand instantly covered with strange patterns, like royal tattoos, signs of power. It was a healing vessel for souls that restrained the curse and slowed the transformation of the infected into a monster. The man confessed that he did the same with their king, pretending not to know to avoid suspicion. The truth came out: the king's body was indeed infected with a parasite. When the parasite slowly grows, you cannot destroy it from the outside. The curse only delays the end briefly. Shirakami realized that he himself would one day become part of this changed forest. The hero suddenly understood. The words about a short extension of life refer to the fate of their ruler. The general recalled that before dying, the demon king said the man in black did something to him. Then he died and the parasite burst out of his body. Its form was smaller than the others, so the infection happened long ago. The man in black, Baz, cast a curse on his world to restrain the growth of this creature. Two people from the parasite world were tensely discussing whether the parasite could be weakened if the infected body was affected by negative magic. The general suggested trying this method on Zebai and asked if Alan Wally could help. One mage said that Lord Grasp's order did not obligate them. Another added it was an honor for them to be his subordinates. Zebai irritably muttered at Wally to be quiet. He asked how the people from New Tyranny who saved him were feeling. He was told they were in isolation, one floor below. Their condition remained a mystery. The curse method was risky. Not everyone could withstand the magical load, so they decided to just observe. It seemed logical, but Zebai, eager to help humanity, himself offered to test the method on himself, and the mages took the white capsules given by the arrivals from the parasite world, after which the treatment began. One mage built an isolation cube around, another used poison magic. The veins on Zebai's body swelled, blood appeared on the surface, the body groaned in pain, but the process continued. Grasp assumed that magic could affect the body. Beyond the limits of physics and medicine, parasites are sensitive to deadly spells that can destroy even their host. This magic harmed both the host and the parasite. The fair-haired mage fell, choking and gagging on blood, while his comrades convulsively tried to get the antidote to save his life. But Zebai stopped them. He felt this was not enough. Then the mages intensified the spell, and the air filled with poisonous heat and purple smoke. He felt worse. He screamed, clutching his head. The veins burst, blood flowed down his face, his body trembled with pain. Despite unbearable torment, he exhaled the parasite. The creature was instantly locked in an isolation magical cube to give it no chance to escape. People exploded with joy. The parasite was expelled. Wally administered the antidote to ease Zebai's condition. Zebai lay in a pool of blood but weakly smiled. He survived. Shirakami scolded his brother. How many times had he told him not to meddle in the Lord's nest? He was already tired of constantly pulling Nuki out of trouble. He turned away and shouted into the back, "If you like the outside world so much, go there yourself and take the strangers with you." Nukazumi bitterly admitted that he deserved exile. His brother works day and night to feed everyone, and he only gets in the way. The hero recalled a conversation with Shirakami. He knew he would soon die, but wanted to stay close to his grandmother, live peacefully, and only asked to take care of his brother because he had never seen the world beyond the forest. He said that Nukazumi was smart, strong, and curious, and the family tied him to this place. "This is a chance," said Shirakami. "Take him with you, show him the outside world. The child of this forest will not become a burden," he added, like an older brother, and the hero solemnly promised to fulfill the request. Nukazumi whistled, and suddenly a giant sparrow named Kyric descended from the sky, raised back in the time of the Great Elder. The boy said that it would allow him to climb on its back only when he asked. He sincerely believed that this was how they could leave the forest. He had not dared before, but now everything was different, and the hero remembered Shirakami's words: soon he would turn into a monster. He was about to say this to Nuki, but the boy interrupted him. "Don't say unnecessary things, let's just go." The sparrow rose into the sky, and from below a giant eye was watching them intently. It belonged to a giant serpent, which lunged into an attack. Hello was already about to fight back, but the boy shouted, "Raise your sword up," and the blade instantly flared with bright light. The shine attracted the attention of the birds, and they, like a flock of lightning, attacked the serpent. Some of the birds followed the sparrow when the group turned towards the water. Nukizumi decisively ordered the giant fish to attack the pursuers, and they instantly devoured the monsters that rushed after them. After that, they decided to rise higher above the treetops away from danger. Flying over the forest, they saw the spiral mountain Yagantilla perhaps that is where the rest of the survivors live. Payne noticed that the boy, controlling the bird, was quietly crying. The youngest in the group quietly whispered that the outside world is beautiful. He will live, said Baz, and added, the boy is smarter than many adults. At the foot of the mountain lived giants, and they were led by one of the 100 sons of Jinbek, the 6th in order, named Gori. He demanded payment for passage blood, flesh, and entrails. The younger ones in the group just glanced. Their entertainments are strange. Can I play a little too? Asked the 11th Lord of Demons, Jidi. The next moment, with one blow of demonic power, the giant was thrown aside. It's hard to even call this a game, Jidi said disdainfully, watching as the opponent fell to the ground. The other giants roared, calling him a freak and an enemy, but suddenly froze when the 6th son of the 100 brothers stepped onto the scene. He laughed and said that this funny little kid is his guest, and no one dares to touch the one who entertains him so skillfully. Koral raised his hand and decisively ordered everyone to get to work. He gives 10 seconds. If the giant does not move within that time, he will show what he is capable of himself. He never wasted time on fools. A true fighter does not waste breath on empty threats. Gori, a creature from the world of vice, roared, filled with rage and pride. He raised his hand and delivered a devastating blow, a single swing that could shatter rocks. Only my father has the right to command me, he roared, digging his claws into the ground. This scream made even the other giants tremble, and when the leader turned around, an icy voice sounded behind him. 10 seconds had passed. The Demon King sighed in disappointment. He had hoped for more from beings from foreign worlds. The demon sharply soared into the air, and his hand, filled with dark energy, hovered over the 6th son. The next moment, his fist struck Gori right in the face. Stone fragments and sparks scattered. Demons of this type are a completely new kind, unlike any known realms. They had a strange wealth of life forms, but no intelligence, only brute strength, and whether it was worth recording at all, thought the observer Midrian Vuki. He noticed that the other creatures had disappeared somewhere, but he cared little about that. The main thing was to gather data about the kaiju. A giant body flew past him, still warm, but already dead. Is this a corpse? Thought Vuki and leaned closer. Then Dajati appeared behind, and they both froze when their eyes met. Alertness flickered in their eyes. No one dared to make the first move. The demon again, but I just barely almost died of fear, muttered Dajati, nervously looking around. The Demon King looked at the bodies of his fallen brothers charred. Remains covered the entire field. Who did this? Where is the hero? And where have the people gone? His voice burst out, but Vuki just waved him off. Go away, Wander. I have work to do. I never bother with the weak, hissed Midrian, and his eye flared, causing the ground beneath to collapse. The demon stood up, laughed hoarsely, and threw. Then do I have the right to lay upon you the death of my warriors? Vuki understood before him was not just a demon, but a force equal to the catastrophe itself. The king hissed, voice like a blade, remember your place? Then show it to me, replied Midrian. When their fists collided, a wave exploded, scattering everything around. Vuki instantly realized. All the demons he had seen before were only shadows compared to this one, the Lord himself. He twisted his body at an unimaginable angle and launched a counterattack, slicing through the air. The demon was thrown far away, but Vuki did not stop. He immediately launched a new assault. I'm not Gallia, and I do not play at concessions. He barked, and his eye flared again, fueling the strike. The demon was thrown back again. The sky trembled from the energy explosion, but Vuki did not slow down. One more strike, and Midrian crumpled the space around him, but the Demon King stood firm this time. With a roar that stopped the wind, he retaliated with a blow, one that could shatter mountains and rewrite the laws of the earth itself. Midrian said it was like magic, though no energy was felt, and ordered the Demon King to show more. In the heat of battle, the creature suddenly realized it was starting to lose, and the opponent was inflicting heavy damage even to its body, created from information compression. After another strike, the enemy dodged, and Vuki pondered. What is this planet turning into? First kaiju, now himself. You don't see such creatures every day. I didn't think I'd have to use this so soon, Midrian muttered. His body suddenly began to change, covered with the cosmic armor of Senar, the form forbidden even in the world of celestial monsters. Looking at the demon, he fired. You wanted to see power? Look and pray for your body. A black hole began to form between his palms, warping the gravity around. It suddenly started forcibly pulling the Demon King inside. He rushed into attack, but Vuki dodged and instantly teleported through space. He used distortions of time and space, and rewound the moments of battle like film frames. After a flurry of strikes, Wookiee finally released the black hole directly at the demon. The earth split open, and Zijiati's body fell into the crater so deep, like an abyss. But the Midrian did not stop. He unleashed cosmic monsters. The monsters roared as they flew into the crater, and began tearing the king's body to pieces. This armor form granted limitless power but destroyed everything around, warping celestial matter. Wookiee himself did not want to use it. He felt the urgent need to warn Gallia. The demons were much stronger than they had assumed. Caution was necessary. From the crater, all scorched but alive, emerged the demonic king. Wookiee was stunned. Could he be immortal? Zijiati laughed. You have exceeded my expectations. He tore off his cloak and the world around trembled from the surge of power. All this time he had been restraining himself, fueled by the energy of the equipment, and now the limits were lifted. Let's start the real fight, he said, and the ground exploded under his step. Midrian created a distortion and pushed back space, but the demon broke through the barrier. How do you do this without magic? The king whispered in surprise, inhaling so deeply that the sky seemed to darken. Reacting to this, the creature from the celestial world raised its hands, trying to tame the shaken gravity. The demon rushed forward and pinned the enemy to the ground, causing the rocks to crack. In Wookiee's consciousness flashed a red warning: danger. He decided to flee. Flying, he tried with all his might to contact Gallia. Reinforcements needed. Demons are dangerous. But the king had already caught up with him. Where are you going? We just started, he exclaimed, striking the air with his hand. Meanwhile, a report on the balance of power was slowly updating over the planet. They assured, the robots do not pose a threat. They are only an advanced technological form of humans. Humans are also not dangerous. Their level is ordinary. The greatest threat is the Kaiju Daikokuzen. Its collision is inevitable, and avoiding contact with it is simply impossible. A special group needs to be formed to take samples of its cells. Wookiee from the second team has already started fieldwork. Daikokuzen wiped an important ship from the face of the water. It must be admitted that the responsibility lies with the Gallia team, said Buoven. Stop Gerod's training. It's just a waste of time. We are all equal. This is our shared responsibility, came the reply. Solving the problem is not difficult. The main thing is to discuss every mistake in order to act consciously. The report reassured. Parasites do not pose a threat. They cannot penetrate their bodies. Giants are also not dangerous. Mayu and Vuhu are still exploring the Trembling Sea Zone and the Black Forest, but contact with them has been lost. Demons also do not pose any threat, came calmly. They are just stubborn, others added. Strong but primitive lower creatures. The discussion on the main ship of the celestial monsters flared up, while on Earth the demonic king was tearing their brother to pieces. Another blow broke through the ground. The body of the Midrian flew aside. Impossible, he whispered. This cannot be an ordinary earthly creature. The demon struck Wookiee again, looking at his damaged body with cold contempt. Let's see if you can withstand this, he threw and swung. The body of the Midrian again crashed into the stone wall and carved a deep crater. This is how you should hit. Remember your quick strike? Watch and learn. The demon king rushed into attack. Blows rained one after another, and each thundered like thunder. Watching pieces of armor fall from the Midrian's body, he coldly asked, "Is that all you are capable of?" Hardly did he himself annihilate the entire army, thought the demon. So there are other foreigners of his caliber. Interesting. Wookiee's body began to recover, and like a living shield around him, the muscular armor of space activated. But suddenly a new strike. An explosion of energy tore him apart. "Hey, did you kill my son?" A booming voice thundered. It was addressed to the 11th Lord of Demons. Before him stood the great Lord Jinbek, ruler of the world of giants. Clenching his fists, the demon thought, enemy. King Jidi realized he had finally met a worthy opponent. State your name. In response, it thundered loudly, Jinbek, leader of the giants. One of his advisors, the third brother from the 100, shouted, "Bow down, demon. Before you is the Lord of the giants. In his presence, you are not even allowed to raise your eyes." But Jinbek sharply struck him, and he instantly fell silent. "Shut up, now I will speak. And what is there left to discuss? Yes, I killed him. The conversation is over," the king of demons replied coldly. And then Jinbek began to cry. His huge hands lifted the battle-wounded body of his son. He whispered, trembling, "My son, have you become this?" Then he threw the body to the ground and shouted, "How could you allow yourself such disgrace? I will never forgive you. My blood flows in your veins, and you have shamed it." He thundered, stomping the body and tearing the earth beneath his feet. But in his voice, there was not only anger, there was also pain, the pain of a father who loved. "How dare you do this to my son?" The giant roared, and the whole mountain trembled from that roar. He was trembling not from fear, but from rage. With one blow, the stranger fell. The leader straightened up, preparing for battle. I am the king of demons, he said defiantly. Something you don't like, then come closer. As you wish, said Jinbek and struck the earth split. Giatti stood firm. This greatly surprised the opponent. Then the demon flew upward and raised his fist. His blow hit the giant's face directly. The earth shook and Jinbek only smiled. Oh, lively one. You need to be a little stronger, he muttered, raising his hand again. The next blow threw the demon into the sky. He couldn't control the flight and sped like lightning. He crashed into the mountains, bouncing off the rocks. He flew through several structures, leaving traces of destruction behind him. Finally, he stopped his heavy breath toward the air. He raised his eyes and saw how far he had been thrown. The giants had already begun to sing mourning words, thinking their leader had won, but Jinbek just snorted. Don't rush, he's still alive. Standing over his son's body, he asked the name of the one he killed. Hearing the answer, he only nodded. I remember, just checking. Gory is not to blame for his death. He just ran into the wrong enemy, and now run, fools. He's coming back. If he catches you, you won't be lucky, roared the leader of the giants. We can't run. Never before has a chief's son fled the battlefield, shouted Berser, clutching his spear. This is an unbreakable rule of our ancestors. He managed to shout, but Jinbek hit him on the head and firmly said, Less talk, more action. Only his gaze, the giants began to suffocate. The air was filled with the smell of blood. The thirst for battle was awakening. The demon soared into the sky and shouted loudly, Giants, shall we continue? Slower, the leader muttered, raising his hand. Release the 11th. Found an interesting opponent, haven't you? Nudo smiled, appearing behind him. Suddenly, a glow flared beneath the giant's feet. A magical circle appeared on the ground. The giants, eyes full of surprise, pounded him with their fists, but in vain. It is impossible to destroy the circle created by him from afar, said the 19th King Nudo. The 11th approached and firmly said, Do not interfere with my fight. He replied that he only wanted to help, but Nudo shook his head negatively and said, I understand your desire, but this enemy is unknown. I do not want you to die. The giant looked enchanted at the glow and exclaimed, Oh, it is glowing, what a wonder. Don't you dare, Nudo. A sharp, formidable voice sounded from behind. The sun has already been eclipsed. Great magical circle activation. The voice thundered and the earth opened, releasing a dazzling light that could destroy the world. Mudo, someone shouted, Where did you teleport them to the Deganzel castle? He had harbored a grudge against that lady for a long time. 10 years ago, her contemptuous glance humiliated him, and Mudo could not miss the chance to take revenge. If the demon wins, it will be to his advantage, and if Jinbek wins, at least he will be glad. Such insolence will cost you dearly, said the 11th King of Demons sternly. Oh, I'd better switch off before His Majesty directs his wrath at me, chuckled the 19th, delighted with the new toys in this world. Jaddy, looking at the place where the opponent had just stood, said he would handle it himself. There were always some problems in Deganzel, and he recalled Nudo and his teleportation magic. The world was no longer what it used to be. He felt the balance of power on the planet shift. Now everything was no longer following the old rules. Demons were no longer unquestionably the strongest, and that was surprising. Kavach noticed that a human fortress should have stood here, but no human bodies were visible. Only magical residue had they managed to create a teleportation circle before Nudo. Even in the demon house you are still alive, hero Halo, called the 11th, waving his hand and catching his garment as if mocking. His voice stirred anticipation of a clash. Peering into the traces of magic, he quietly said, Northeast, a little further, and Giatti jumped there, announcing he would try to visit. Meanwhile, Demon Earth. In the castle of the 23rd Queen Degazel, giants teleported there, broke through the ceiling, and like a storm, burst into the delight of her court. The head of the giants asked what had happened, and his son replied that they found themselves in a different place and smelled a nauseatingly sweet scent that aroused his suspicion. Why did this impudent one appear in our castle? The giants exclaimed, suddenly offended by such an uninvited appearance. Don't frown, let's have some tea, gently suggested the 23rd Queen Degazel, smiling as if welcoming admirers in a garden. Creatures crowded around her and whispered words of exaltation, uttering praise as if a ritual of admiration. Step back, Deganzel, the giants replied. We will watch you closely, and the tension between them turned into strained silence. The second court representative asked where they had come from and extended a hand of friendship, a gesture that turned into cultural misunderstanding. The giants said they caught a sweet scent and thought it was food. So if it was taste, I'll let them share, inviting to a celebration of acquaintance. The bowl flew straight into the giant's face, caught it with his teeth, chewed, and spat right at the queen. What was usual for them was taken here as an insult. A servant behind the queen instantly drew a sword and deflected the shards. The culture responded with a sword. The queen, covering her mouth, ironically explained, The problem is in cultural differences. Are you the mistress here? Growled the third brother of the 100. Surely your mage brought us here. Return us immediately or we will destroy your home. The queen simply put her hands on her face and, captivated, gazed at those large muscles as if seeing a new form of art. She doesn't understand? Someone muttered. It seems she just doesn't want to listen. Someone is using different magic abilities of strangers. We've seen this and reported it more than once. What other worlds? One of the elders objected. The answer quickly turned into a quarrel between the one used to being understood and the one encountering the new let's warmly welcome the guests, de Gazel suggested, and the people around her removed their cloaks. Under their cloaks emerged various, undoubtedly beautiful demon hybrids created to humiliate and at the same time attract. The giants, seeing this, said that these creatures were nothing like the demons. They knew it felt as if they were a different breed. De Gazel explained, "These are ordinary weak demons who have recovered and now are not inferior to the highest chiefs. She is the queen responsible for the technological development of the army, and her hybridization experiments make the warriors much more effective. If I get perfectly trained giant bodies, they will become 10 times stronger. Let's be friends." The queen extended her hand as if offering a deal. "Ha, you would beg for mercy," laughed one of the giants. "For them, honor and strength are the only things that matter. The value is in the development of the body," Berser insisted, but his father sharply interrupted him and ordered him to be silent. "You always babble nonsense, shut up. So you will not allow us to take our bodies. Too bad we could have become good friends. Now I will have to explain this in the language of force," de Gazel said coldly, and the demons surrounding her rushed at the giants. The leader of the giants crushed a demon with one blow, threw it in the face with contempt. "This is boring. If you are the mistress, come out personally, one-on-one." After these words, the wave of attack surged instantly. Enormous speed and fury fell upon the leader of the giants like lightning splitting the air. Voices roared around, dust rose in bitter clouds, and the earth groaned under the blows. He was the queen's favorite, the chimera hero Ficaxio, once the 23rd hero, who lost human limits and became a chimera. His figure is a pulsating mixture of strength and technology, and even danger obeyed him, because only a warrior transformer could not only withstand it but also create it. In him merged essences, a fairy helper and a demon horse, a sound bird and an iron monkey, a magic crystal and the queen's blood. Each part set its own rhythm of battle, and together they gave birth to a creature that frightens the imagination and rushes forward like a hurricane. He raced with unheard-of speed. His scream merged with the whistle of the wind, and this very speed was an attack. Cutting through space, he left behind a trail of broken forms and destroyed hopes, as if the cunning of time had become a blade. Ficaxio used the fusion technique with the fairy, a beastly ritual attack called Javato Drive in the hymn. The body and the helper turned into one holy assault, spinning and breaking the enemy's defense, tearing reality and leaving rifts where the strike triumphed. Jinbek, reacting lightning fast, rushed into contact and hit the chimera. The blow thundered against stone and metal, like the collision of two worlds. His fist, born of the giant's earth, broke the surface and threw living beings into a vortex of falling. The blow turned out to be brutal. The floor could not withstand it. It crumbled, and the entire group along with the chimera fell through the rotten flooring into dark levels where smells and shadows merged into a fatal mixture. On the lower floor, where the fighters found themselves, the bodies of the most diverse creatures hung eerily like trophies or supplies for experiments. Jinbek looked and saw what seemed like a library of sustenance, a creepy storage for those who failed to survive. But Jinbek's son noticed. It seems this is a warehouse of experimental samples. Here one can feel the hand of criminal science, as if the fates of those creatures end in jars and experimental loops, transformed into resources for a foreign megamachine. The queen, who grew up inside this chimera, exclaimed she had never seen such a powerful body before. Her voice was not about affection, but filled with the appetite of processing. She assessed the form, muscles, and potential ground for transformation, and enriched her plan. "These muscles are what I want," she murmured, promising to smash, resew, and resell His Majesty's body. The queen turned into a shell of living creatures, like an armor that fuels her ambitions and pushes her to new, cruel experiments. From this living shell was born a true, successful chimera, a combination of parts merged into one huge, terrifying creature that stood before the giants, ready for battle and for artistic desecration of the body. Jinbek immediately rushed into a clash with the armor. The fights merged into a roar. The chimera was gigantic, and the queen inside warned. She still had many tricks, and each new one was another secret from the arsenal of criminal science. She reminded that brute force is not always enough. "Brutal strength is useless against my art," she said, hinting that their opponent was more than just muscles. Her attacks were finely tuned to the weak spots of the living mechanism. Jinbek tried to use the formidable tongue of the thunder god, but his power did not reach the target. The attempt was in vain. Magical techniques lazily slid over the outer armor, as if over a shield that never knew resistance. Then the queen changed. Her body transformed, and she unleashed the threads of the infernal spider, thin, deadly fibers that contracted and entwined the huge enemy like a web that suffocates even a giant. The huge net wrapped around the giant. Its threads contracted and formed a web that bound the limbs in immobile captivity, forcing his heavy breath to become thin and slow under the pressure of these magical weavings. "The time of punishment has come," whispered the queen, skillfully shifting the fight into the realm of pain and control. Her intention was not just to kill, but to slowly break the giant and refine his body for the new needs of the army. She threw a new technique into the game, Dragon Unicorn Rotation, a spiral movement that merges strength and magic into a destructive storm, and this name echoed through the battles like preparation for the final strike. Returning to Jinbek, the queen soothingly said she would not prolong the fight. The end was near. She knew the anatomy of living beings perfectly, and her movements were precise, without any unnecessary gesture, everything measured and ready for the final strike. She adjusts attacks to the opponent's body, identifies weak spots, and aims at them. Her strength lies in understanding the structure of flesh, not in a blind method. This makes her a wildly dangerous opponent. "The outcome of the battle is decided not only by brute force," the queen said with a slight smile. "With such rules, you are easy to control," and immediately demonstrated an example of manipulation, pointing to the fragile boundary between power and oppression. After her words, inorganic larvae spilled out of the chimera's mouth, crawling and burrowing into the giant's bodies, into heads, into nostrils. Every crack became a tunnel for these pests, penetrating inside like destruction programs. These larvae devoured the body from within. Stomach, intestines, kidneys, liver, and heart suffered simultaneously. Knowing the entrails, they caused unbearable, sharp pain, while outside remained only a beautiful but empty shell. The queen trembled with impatience. She already imagined how she would use this material. Her eyes burned with the thought of presenting the trophy before the Lord of Darkness, awaiting his admiration. But it turned out the giant was not finally broken instead of defeat. He simply dozed off, mistaking the invasion for a pleasant massage. In response, he began sneezing as if expelling something from the depths of his lungs. When he cleaned his nose, the entire wormy swarm poured out loose and disgusting. The whole crowd of larvae fell to the floor, and those present were left bewildered. And he naively said, "Giatti was better," as if a comparison from ancient times reached the wall of this slaughterhouse and shattered the queen's resolve. "Boring," he grumbled, grabbed the chimera and began breaking its shell. Inside, the queen rattled with rage. "How disgusting! Let me go! What are you doing?" Her voice burst from the very heart of the mechanism, but the giant had other plans. He managed to break free. The center of rotation lifted him into flight, but held on so that the chimera had no chance to escape. His deadly grip squeezed the armor, and the battlefield filled with the screech of metal and the queen's scream, who realized her plan was collapsing. Bending in armor, the queen felt with surprise how immense the giant's strength was, and the deformation of the shell did not allow her to break free. The trap she created became her own cage. But she only laughed, shouting that the enemies were celebrating victory too early. "Forward, my chimeras!" she cried, summoning a new wave of creatures. The chimera puppets rushed to the king of giants, but stopping before him, instead of attacking, they began to praise their mistress again, like broken idols who forgot their purpose. The giant froze in surprise at this spectacle, and the queen shouted at her creatures, calling them worthless monsters who betray their mistress even in death. Jinbek clenched the armor into a ball, and inside it the queen pleaded for mercy, saying she would become his servant. Bring benefit, just let her go. Realizing he would not listen, she changed her tone from pleading to angry and cast curses, as if she wanted to bite him with words. "I will not die alone," she shouted. "I will take everyone with me." And she activated the magic of the most powerful self-destruction. Light and darkness merged into one explosion. But the effect of the explosion stopped between the giant's palms. His hands swallowed the flash and locked the magic inside, like a trap in a steel lock. "Finally silent," he said quietly, staring at the fading light. From the remains, the chimeras formed a dense ball. The giant threw it aside. The fragment hit his comrade and killed him on the spot. Seeing this, Jinbek froze, suddenly fell to his knees and shouted, "Are you wounded? Respond." He pressed his son's body to himself and whispered through tears, "How is this possible? My dear son, even after death she reached you." Although she was an enemy, he admitted such will deserves respect. "Well then, Berserker, where are we now?" He threw into the silence, but there was no one nearby to answer. Around the sphere, other creatures gathered. They silently applauded, not understanding the tragedy. At this time, in a world of lawlessness, new life was being born at a new human base, where the world connected fragments of different worlds. A girl from New Tyranny named Hig was called to the headquarters. They were waiting for her with important news. Zebai asked where the two who saved him from the bandits were. They were supposed to be left on another floor due to suspicion of parasite infection, but they disappeared without a trace. Hig replied that she had escorted them a few days ago and added with a grim expression. New symptoms confirmed they were indeed infected. Rage boiled in Zebai's chest. He wanted to destroy everything around. Anger choked him and made him doubt whether he himself was becoming a monster, similar to those he feared, so he decided to leave before he caused pain to others. Before leaving, they left words, said Hig. As long as we remain human, we have not lost meaning. She explained that in their world, sacrifice is the highest virtue. When the elders give themselves for others, their life has meaning. So do not blame yourself, Zebai, she said softly. Suddenly a voice rang out from the wild world. Dinner is ready, and the smell of a strange dish filled the air. Moon, Cartel, Plana, and Mika, intrigued, asked what exactly was prepared. I went to the edge of the red forest. It's armored ants, blood mushrooms, larvae of evil, and some meat. Clumsy but nutritious, the girl replied. The girl from the Great Catastrophe addressed Plana. I'm hungry, time to eat. But she refused. Her religion forbids meat. Another, from the parasitic world, explained that she sticks to a safe diet, no meat due to infection risk, and the representative of the world of celestial monsters sadly said that they only had food tubes left. Kayla from the machine world had already started eating, and said with satisfaction that it was a hearty, high-calorie, and wonderful ration, slightly bitter, but healthy. Some tried it and actively discussed the taste. The meat was a bit bitter but resembled lizard meat. The main thing was that it was not spoiled. Yun reminded that supplies were running out and there was no time for fussiness. Mika, swallowing a larva, agreed, although she clearly did not want to. Takuya from the Great Catastrophe said that although it was an insect, it had muscles. Then he added, it smells damp, but it's edible, showing a plant similar to bitter ginger, and said further, boil it, add soy sauce, and it will be wonderful. He carefully poured the sauce into the bowl. The dish shone with a golden glow, and even became appetizing in appearance. People began to savor it and asked for seconds. Delicious, they exclaimed, and the girl from the wild world smiled and said that even simple ingredients can play with new colors if prepared with soul. She asked if he could cook that fierce field mouse. She had just dug up a buried carcass and brought it home. The meat looked incredibly tempting. She had long dreamed of tasting it, so she asked not to waste time and to light a fire to try it right now. Masayoshi jumped up and shouted that he had a bad feeling. That carcass was probably buried for a reason. It needed to be taken far away from the camp immediately, otherwise trouble would come faster than they could hide. After some time, a bear approached their shelter, slowly sniffing the tracks and the ground as if searching for something, and its gaze repeatedly stopped at the place where the dug-up prey had recently lain. Masayoshi whispered quietly that this was a bear from their world. When they were on the verge of exhaustion, they often buried prey with earth to return for it later, so by taking the carcass, the people inadvertently attracted the predator to the camp. Sua, a representative of the world of celestial monsters, was directing Salmon during the deployment of equipment, setting up panels, securing stands, running cables to the inverter and distributor, checking voltage and signal stability. When everything started working, he smiled, thanked, and joked that Salmon had the strength of heavy machinery. She replied that it wouldn't hurt to pump up a bit, and Grasp from the machine world asked if it was a generator, to which Sua confirmed a portable solar battery. Born in the era of space expeditions, she feeds on the sun, and one such installation is enough for the daily needs of the entire camp. Light, communication, filters, and even weapons can be recharged without draining the grid. You already have a complete set for life, Zebi noticed, approaching and looking at the tightly connected panels that quietly hummed with a rhythmic flow of energy and gave people at least some stability. They talked about how they had held out for 4 days on bandit lands. Although they did not know if there was really a threat there, they had not been touched yet, so it seemed that for retreat they had chosen not the worst of possible options. After all, they are people too. Maybe it will be possible to negotiate, someone began. But his thought was cut off by a sharp dog bark that pierced the yard and made everyone involuntarily reach for their weapons. A girl from the lawless world named Iglay approached the circle, leading a dog on a leash, and said in a cold voice that their naivety was dangerous. People of lawlessness should never be underestimated. Why then has our world almost collapsed, even though it only has people? She threw out and answered herself. The true enemy of humanity is evil intentions hidden in everyone. When anger is given free rein, even the best orders turn to dust. Thank you for the warning, but look at us, Zebi replied. We are from different worlds and cultures, but when faced with common enemies, we did not tear each other apart, but stood shoulder to shoulder. No one knows what lies ahead, But it is too early to give up. Life shows that even divided peoples can form an alliance when there is simply no other choice. Iglay shrugged. That is exactly why they are so easy to use. Trust is a wonderful bait when on the other side stands someone who knows how to wait and strike at the moment you relax. She suddenly pressed a knife to the throat of the light-haired mage, and for a moment dead silence reigned in the camp. Everyone felt how fragile peace hung on the edge of a knife. The girl explained that a third of the refugees were actually bandits who had been waiting for the right moment for a long time. Now everyone must hand over supplies and equipment, otherwise blood will be shed immediately. Stunned, the people realized. Among them were those who only pretended to be victims, and this thought hit harder than screams and gunshots. Suddenly the blade bent. It was a child's toy. Iglay smiled coldly. They had already been fooled by a simple show, so let them not underestimate human cunning. She said decisively, "Do not forget about human nature. Trickery, greed, and fear work stronger than a sword." And Zebai, despite everything, held on to his dream of peace and begged to at least try understanding. The elder man said thoughtfully that he was still considering it, while Iglay meanwhile calmed the dog and promised there would be no fight. Now the main thing is to outline common rules of coexistence. Someone threw out that fresh meat is always better, and carelessly asked when Iglay would set the dog loose, so as not to waste rations. She sharply cut off, "This is my family, and everyone here has their own values." The observer checked the cauldron. 2 others circled the perimeter and said, "Today again it is quiet." In a few days they had gathered enough provisions and magical energy to accept a fight when needed. An armed fighter gestured to be silent. From the dust on the horizon, trucks appeared, on whose roofs people sat and looked into the camp without fear, as if sizing up the prey. The brothers from Kenkai's gang argued. The younger was asked what he would do if he had magic, and he answered without hesitation he would learn to fly to always stay above everyone. The elder slapped him for the boring dream, and the younger, apologizing, listened as Jensen muttered that he would take magic from everyone, share it with his brother, and then overthrow Guru, their boss. Craig was already imagining in his head how to take everything. Men, women, supplies, equipment, just hit hard with magic, he said, and the younger hesitantly asked what hit hard meant. In response, a kick and a hit on the head. "A club, not a brother. You don't understand magic at all." The elder barked, disdainfully brushing off all the stupid questions. "Use your brain, idiot. A dumb monkey with magic remains a dumb monkey." He added. The younger nodded but mentally cut off that the dumb one here was probably someone else. He silently kept his plans to himself. To acquire magic, break out of this world, find a city or a new base, and build his paradise where no one could command his life anymore. When the transport approached, the guards opened warning fire and shouted to stop, otherwise they would shoot to kill, and one of the bandits, hiding behind the armor, smiled. It was time to start the real game. The armored doors of the body slid apart, and massive silhouettes of giants appeared inside, more like living machines than creatures. They raised their hands up in unison with their riders, the older brothers from the gang, who controlled them through neural chains. The older brothers brazenly climbed onto the backs of the giants, laughing and muttering that now these toys would show what true masters of chaos were capable of. "Time to try out new toys," shouted one, and the base guards, not realizing, took the giants for part of the gang and instantly rushed to prepare the defense. The attack began. The first explosions shattered the calm, the earth trembled, and the sky instantly filled with dust and smoke. A roar sounded, and Zebai rushed to the window. He couldn't believe they were being attacked. Everything happened too suddenly, like a betrayal. Kayla shouted to him to save the civilians. To the question, "Who are they?" she answered with pain, "Those we least expected." Mages and armed soldiers showered the giants with a hail of fire. The bandits on their backs laughed, boasting about the perfect work of their boss engineer. They enthusiastically praised the new toy, saying that if their chief hadn't been on guard, they would have long ago captured the entire base with these little ones. Metal hoops gleamed on the giants' heads, neurocontrol devices, electrodes created based on robotics. Through them, the giants were turned into battle puppets. Kayla froze in horror. Where did the bandits get such technology? One of the bandits noticed the girls near the base and loudly called out to the others, "The trophies are already waiting." The younger brother raised his hand. It was the signal to attack. The crowd rushed forward, shouting, "Take everything you can." The people in the shelter noticed the breakthrough and instantly realized there were too many attackers, so the only chance was to call for reinforcements before the defense line fell. The giants changed the course of the battle. Every step they took shattered the shelter, and the people lost any advantage, finding themselves under a barrage of forces impossible to resist. Zebai flew into the air, raising his magical staff, and loudly shouted for everyone to stop. He screamed, and there was a pleading tremor in his voice. "We surrender, but demand only one thing: do not kill any of mine." Seeing the staff and magical glow, the bandits were stunned. This was the very sorcerer that Horus had spoken about. Their leader had long been searching for this mage. "The boss wants to see him," said one, and ordered no resistance. The rest were lucky. They were left alive. The light-haired mage calmed everyone. "I will be fine. They need my magic. That means I am valuable to them. I have long wanted to talk to their leader." One of the refugees anxiously remembered Leo. He had once also been taken for a talk. The unemployed man said that this time they had an ace, and the mage extended a small cube and showed the parasite inside. He was holding the creature with a magical spell. As soon as something happened to him, the seal would disappear and the parasite would break free. It is enough to release it at the enemy base, and the whole gang would become infected. A suicide ace, but effective. The unemployed man and his younger sister started a quarrel again. They could not agree on how far one could go for the sake of victory. Zebai hoped he would not have to resort to the cube. Igle looked coldly. "You are too naive. To survive among people, you must be ready for anything." On the way to the bandits' base, Zebai was running through information about the Kikai group, one of the 7 vices of the lawless world. Their leader was a heartless shadow walking over corpses. For them, there was neither morality nor pity, only robbery, slavery, and blood. Kikai were considered the embodiment of evil. 2 bandits led Zebai to the very center of the base, firmly pressing him between them so he would not escape or open a portal. Inside it was cramped, dozens of armed figures, piles of explosives, generators humming, flames blazing, and screams sounding. The light flickered barely, illuminating a world ruled by fear and the power of force. Gore, with a self-satisfied smile, boasted that everything went smoothly, and assured that he would receive a generous reward from the chief for the captured stranger. The leader of the group turned out to be Rinri, a tall man with sharp features, tired eyes, and the smile of a person who long ago no longer distinguished good from evil. The bandits reported to him that they had captured a mage from another world, the very one Geodesi had long spoken about, the old advisor to Kikai, who now served as their informant. "Fragile for the leader of bloody bandits," Geodesi muttered without taking his eyes off Rinri, "but do not relax. The most dangerous monster always has a human face." The controlled giants impressed with an efficiency that no squad could achieve. "If this pack possesses such technologies, it is better to cooperate than to be enemies," Geodesi added, though there was doubt in his voice. Zebai stepped forward and, despite the tense atmosphere, calmly introduced himself. "Yes, I am an alien. You need magic, don't you? We do not seek a fight. Let's talk peacefully, exchange knowledge, and find a solution," he began, but his words were cut off. The gang leader cried. Tears ran down his face, and Zebai froze, not knowing what to think. Rinri extended her hand with a bowl and asked, "Do you know what this food is?" Zebai blushed and said he was seeing it for the first time. "It's pudding," Rinri explained. "We found it outside, sweet, very sweet, divine taste." He licked the spoon and said he had never tasted anything like it. Wants more and hopes the mage will tell where to get it. Zebai replied that he did not know, but knew something else about parasites that infect people. His people had learned to fight them and save the infected. He suggested exchanging information. "We will survive only if we share. Together we have a chance." Rinri sipped the pudding and with a mocking smile repeated, "Parasites. Those are the ones that turn people into monsters. We had a few too, went crazy, but stayed in Bjorn. No problem. Do you think this is enough for negotiations? Do you take me for a fool?" He raised a pistol, aimed it at the prisoner, and shouted angrily, "Then die!" Pulled the trigger. The bullet hit not the mage, but the ropes that held him tied. "That's what I would have said earlier." Rinri smiled and said, "But times are changing, as are we. Cooperation is the path to power." Zebai stared at him intently, unable to understand madman, genius, or actor. His thoughts changed every second, and it was impossible to see the boundary of humanity. Meanwhile, in the new outlaw shelter, one of the men could not calm down and whispered, "I hope Zebai is okay." They agreed. If the negotiations succeed, the mage will launch magical fireworks into the sky. If not, immediate evacuation. Masayoshi, hearing this, grumbled angrily, leaving a peaceful place again. He looked back at the tall girl with a ponytail and smiled mysteriously. It seemed he had a plan. "If you want cooperation," said the mage, "answer my question. How do you repair giants?" "Giants?" Rinri asked again. "My people came across a baby. It was completely exhausted. We sheltered it. Then the adults came. For them, family is above all, and they repaid us for our kindness." He fell silent, and his voice took on a false softness. "We had a few electrodes and bodies from CAF robots. The giants agreed to help with experiments. Although," Rinri smiled, "we rather forced them out of fear for the child." Then he took out a small device, aimed it at a rat, and whispered, "Release." The rat instantly was absorbed inside and disappeared. The device turned into a strange gun. "This is a vessel that melts souls. It uses the power of a curse and transforms life energy into a bullet. It looks simple, but the power is like that of a material engine. However, it works only with the victim's consent. A curse, Zebai responded in surprise. A weapon from that world where curses are destroyed, and those robots, you gathered a lot of data. We interrogated scientists and conducted experiments. I'm just curious, Rinri replied. The mage turned around, and behind him opened an incredible sight. Armor from the world of machines, a red amplifier from the realm of giants, fragments of the great tree's root, and dozens of items he didn't even recognize. This man collected the power of different worlds. Rinri instantly changed the subject. It's unfair that only you ask, now it's your turn to answer. He took out the hero's sword, covered with cracks, and twirled it in his hand. There is some strange energy hidden in it, but the blade does not react at all to blood or electricity. How does it work? It is a sacred sword from my world, Zebai answered. Only the chosen hero can activate it. It responds to the owner's spiritual power and emits pure magic. Where did you get it? The 38th heroine, Connie, gave it to me, Rinri said. Her squad was heading to the 38th Demon King, Roya Roach, but they were struck by royal commanders. We came across their camp while they were still healing. It seemed the commanders were the very children of the 38th King. Besides incredible strength, they had an overwhelming numerical advantage. The heroine realized she would not survive, so she gave her sword to her man and asked him to kill the Demon King to restore her honor, so said the gang leader. But he lied. The bandits killed the heroine. We are people too. We must fulfill her last wish. Isn't that right, Zebai? He addressed the mage. The latter replied, you lie. The hero would never entrust his mission to an outsider. Your people deceived her and cruelly attacked as soon as they learned what they needed. You stole the sword. Answer, Rinri. What happened to Connie? A foolish question. You understand everything anyway, Rinri replied, and to convince spoke in the spirit of their values. In this chaos, only those with trump cards survive. We are the same. I don't care about your feelings. This is how we forge our values. Now show what you are capable of. I will ask again, we are all people. How can one devalue the sacrifice of the dead? Isn't it better to work together as comrades? Zebai said. You said you learned about technologies of other worlds from experts. What happened to them? Asked the mage. The black-haired man fell silent. Now Zebai was finally convinced. They draw power from three sources, from many worlds, from conscience and morality, and from life experience. They do not take everything from others that could be useful. What cannot be used they grind to dust. Their strength rests on this. He recalled the words of comrades. The true enemy of humanity is the evil thoughts hiding in each of us. Sorry, but our alliance will not work. No matter how much we strive to survive, if we stain our hands, we will be no different from monsters. We will not let our dignity fade. We will take nothing from others and will not allow anything to be taken from us. We will fight against the whole world as true people. I know for sure my younger brother would say the same. After these words, the bandits asked who his brother was, and he answered, my brother is a hero. So Rinri said and waved his hand, what a pity. The bandits aimed their guns at Zebai. The leader coldly said that their friendly conversation must end then. The mage raised his hand in response and showed. He had a sealed parasite which he could release at any moment. I gave it reinforcement, he said. You won't stop me. None of us will get out of here alive if you try. Rinri spoke again. Who will suffer from the strangers we have sheltered here? Nothing justifies the loss of human dignity, neither the parasite nor anyone else. It's sad to be infected and turn into a monster. So are you ready to do anything for your own? He pushed. Prove that we are the same as you. Your trump cards are so tiny that you have to resort to empty threats. I had hopes for your army of 3,000 people, but intelligence and our conversation showed the truth. You and your people are not a threat. Thanks for the information. Now we can calmly destroy you. From Rinri's lips came a threatening tone. Now we can finish you off. In response, a mouse corpse suddenly flew into the bandits' camp, and they froze in surprise. The corpse was thrown by people who did not belong to the world of lawlessness. Salmon, at Masayoshi's request, dug up a mouse and threw it there. The unemployed man thanked and said that if Zebai got out, they would leave. He apologized to the mage and promised not to release the parasite. We'll handle it ourselves. The bandit stood over the mouse corpse and mockingly asked, what is this crap and where did it come from? What kind of training is this? To hell with them, I'll shoot as soon as the boss gives the order. At that moment, the bear hit one of the bandits and exploded with a loud roar. The bear grabbed one with its teeth, and the others immediately began shooting at it. Rinri noticed that the giant bear appeared just in time. Someone from his camp had brought the beast, without which the mage would be powerless. Zebai took advantage of the fog and the noise screen and slipped away unnoticed. The bear rushed at the bandits. Masayoshi watched and commented. The people rushed over and asked what had happened. I just released our bear, Masayoshi replied. That is not your bear, an old man shouted. Meanwhile, the giant controlled by one of the bandits stomped on the bear, and the bandits ordered the animal to be quiet. One of the bandits barked, "You must be in cahoots with the mages, this is how they thank for mercy," and added that the mage would be caught later, but first they would squeeze everything they could from his friends. But suddenly everyone noticed something huge moving on the horizon. A monster burst out of the forest, a cub of the titanic bear from the red forest. It was thrown at them. The old man shouted loudly, "Run, its mother is already coming." The giant bear from the wild world looked straight at the bandit's base, breathing heavily, and the ground trembled under its steps. Meanwhile, Zebai, disguised as a bandit, quietly slipped into the storage and returned his staff. Piloted giants clashed in a fierce battle with the titan bear. Explosions, dust columns, and a muffled roar blended into complete chaos. Watching the fight, Masayoshi muttered that everything was already getting out of control, and Tai replied, "I warned about this." General Grasp noted that the unemployed man outdid himself. This she-bear caused quite a commotion among the bandits. "Maybe that's enough for Zebai to slip away," he said. Salmon suddenly shouted for everyone to look ahead. Near the bandits' base, they saw a mage running straight out of the flames. He was alive. People rushed to him, covering him with their backs, and a tanned woman with a tail raised a rifle. "What kind of beast is this? You brought him from the red forest," Zebai exclaimed. At that moment, the bear fixed its gaze on him and swung its paw, but the mage instantly activated the speed shoes and dodged. The giant, piloted by Grig the heretic's brother from the Kikai faction, grabbed the bear by the paw and charged into battle. Even the strength of several giants was no match. The bear was a true monster, born for destruction. One of the brothers sharply asked the younger where Jigenzi was, but he only mumbled something incomprehensible. The elder cut him off. "Not the time for talk," and, without hesitation, continued piloting the giant in battle. At that very moment, the bandit leader descended into the basement. He pondered aloud, "Is one such giant enough? No, we need 20, or better 50. From the cages in the basement came the groans of people. Prisoners begged for help. "This is a church. They brought us here because they said they save refugees here." Rinri, remaining calm, pointed a finger at the camera and whispered, "Devour." The ceiling trembled, and then he added, "Holy Spirit, you will not understand it." Watching the clash, Zebai saw how even 3 giants were powerless against the beast. "If they can't handle it, then no human can," he thought. Suddenly, Rinri himself burst out of the basement. In his hands gleamed a strange device called the Soul Smelter. The device from the world of curses suddenly transformed into a giant cannon. It was much bigger than a pistol, because it was charged with the souls of 50 people. The cannon thundered. The projectile fired straight at the bear and pierced it through. When the beast fell, it became clear that the bullet had pierced not only it, but also several buildings further, leaving a burning tunnel. Zebai froze, stunned. Even demons did not use such power and cold tactics. Rinri sharply pointed his finger at the place where the mage stood and harshly ordered, "Break his arms and legs." Suddenly, bandits surrounded Zebai and raised their weapons. His comrades, seeing this from the hideout, rushed to help, shouting at the same time, "They killed the bear. Zebai is in danger. We won't make it." The mage stood with his back to the wall, confused and looking for a way out. He did not know what else these madmen could turn into, and his magic was clearly not enough to escape. "That's how they survive," he thought. "This is the power of those who have renounced all that is human. What if we betray the ideals and release the parasite?" The thought instantly ran through Zebai's mind. "No, we must think soberly. Parasites are also natural enemies, even more dangerous. Is there really no other way out?" The team rushed to help the mage, but at that very moment, Cartel noticed something strange in the bear's body. Tentacles crawled out from his fresh wounds. The animal was infected with a parasite. At first, it was assumed that the infection occurred after contact with prisoners from other worlds, but the real source is the red forest, and it is already engulfed by the infection. "We ate beasts from that forest. If they were cooked, it should be safe. Parasites do not withstand high temperatures, but the real trouble is inside the host's body," Pio explained. The tentacles, filled with insane strength, lunged at the people. The parasite obeyed a strict law. Its power grew as the host grew stronger. The tentacles latched onto the younger of the brothers in the group. He begged for help, but the elder roared, "Don't come closer," and found himself among the engulfed. The screams merged into chaos. The infected mutated into worm-like monsters that blindly attacked all living things, devoured creatures, and evolved endlessly. "If the host is so strong," Zebai whispered anxiously, "the development speed will only increase. We won't manage." Something new burst out of the bear's body, the Virum monster. A titan bear with several arms and a maw stretching to the torso, and a giant eye grew in the middle. The mutated bear with the parasite scared even the bandits. It simply ate the giant whole. They screamed and fled. Ta Rinri raised the Soul Eater and shouted, "Stop! Those who desert will get a bullet." and aimed the weapon directly at the monster. Hearing this, the bandits trembled, turned around, and rushed to shoot at the monster. But their bullets were useless. The tentacles pierced their bodies and lifted them into the air. Zebai's comrades rushed to him, asking if he was intact. Salmon, out of breath, shouted, "Everything has gone awry, but while the monster is distracted by them, we have a chance to escape." "No," said the mage, "the situation has changed, we will help." "What are you saying? They wanted to kill us," exclaimed the girl from the world of giants. But the blonde warrior objected. "We are not doing this for their sake. In the church are captive foreigners, innocent people. If we do not stop this plague, it will consume everything. If even one of the natural enemies becomes too strong, humanity will lose its last chance to survive. We must at least slow down its growth a little." Zebai looked at his allies and whispered, "I will not condemn those who flee. Everyone has the right to choose, but we bear responsibility for this torn world." Meanwhile, Rinri stood before the monster and pressed the release command again. Soul Eater once again took the form of a giant cannon. Rinri, with a smile on his lips, muttered, "I wonder how this parasite will react to this." The second cannon shot thundered this time directly at the mutated bear. A bullet tore through the body, but the hole instantly sealed as if it had never been there. "Resilient bastard," Rinri said, his eyes glowing, "I need him." Suddenly, the bear's head stretched out like rubber, and its jaws lunged straight at the gang leader. He barely dodged, but another tentacle thundered straight at him. Suddenly, Gore jumped out from the side, slashed the tentacle with his sword, and shouted, "To hell with the church! Let's start over, Rinri." But another tentacle, growing right from the beast's eye, struck the deputy leader directly in the chest and tossed him into the air. Several tentacles attacked Rinri. Aganthi grabbed him from all sides, tore off his armor, and ripped up the ground around him. Suddenly, a fireball shot out from behind the monster, tearing through the air with the roar of an explosion. Aliens from other worlds rushed to help. They shouted to pull out the captives and give weapons to those who could still fight. Mages raised barriers and ordered the wounded to be taken there. All forces had to be mobilized. One of the bandits, who had run out of ammo, desperately shouted for help. They threw him an energy cartridge. Watching people desperately fight the parasite, Kakaya's leader smiled. "A wonderful show. They thinned our army to now heroically rescue us. They seemed safe but were preparing the strike from the very beginning." Zeb replied, "No, this was impossible to foresee." "Let's unite," the mage said. "We need your cunning and knowledge of other worlds, Rinri." He laughed bitterly. "You are even more cruel than me. Are you going to kill everyone, aren't you, mage?" A growth appeared on the parasite's body, which bubbled as if something was moving inside. The growth suddenly exploded. Hundreds of larvae burst out, rushing straight at the mage and the leader. One was saved thanks to a comrade, but the other did not make it. Rinri's body collapsed to the ground, and everyone witnessed tiny parasites crawling into him and disappearing under the skin. "He can't be helped anymore," the girl said, while Zebai was horrified thinking about the leader's last words. Did he want to kill everyone? What did he mean? Then the parasite stretched forward, and from its body appeared Gout's head. It spoke. Seeing this, the older brother whispered in horror, "Helpless fool." The parasite that used the younger brother's brain came to its senses and laughed. "Worthless idiots, we won't tell you anything. Don't hit me." The elder roared from below, "Bastard, do you even understand what you're doing? Come down, freak, I'll make a cutlet out of you." At that moment, a tentacle pierced his leg. The body flew into the air, slammed to the ground, and the parasite muttered, "Don't be angry, don't hit." After another blow, it slurred, Sorry, I'm a fool." It brought the body to its face, and the older brother, groaning in pain, begged for forgiveness, insisting that he was to blame himself. The parasite beat him again, apologizing and at the same time shouting that it would never forgive. The body was torn to pieces, only a leg remained. The parasite shouted, "Hey, where are you?" and then giggled, trembling with excitement. "How wonderful this is! I am so hungry, very hungry." The bandits, gripped by horror, scattered in all directions. But new tentacles grew from beneath the ground, grabbed them, and devoured them alive. "Where are you running to?" asked the parasite. "Come on, let's become one." "You are all mine, we will become one. Ha ha ha, I will eat you all, more, I have always wanted this." He screamed hysterically, devouring people by the dozens. From the world of parasites, Catherine trembled. This is the end, nothing will stop him now. The parasite transformed into Supervarum, a gigantic monster. The maw consisted of several jaws, the body was covered with countless eyes. Hands holding their own eyes grew on the head. Behind stood a crab-like shell from which tentacles burst out. Dozens of legs stretched below, and hands stuck out from the tail. It was the end. Both magic and weapons, everything proved powerless. The parasite grabbed its cheeks with its hands and spread into a smile, like a child before a feast. Where the base once stood, now only ruins remained. People called this place Kekai. Once there was a church here, a refuge of prayer, where people sought hope. Even the bandits knew the old legends, but for those who lived by robbery, those words were empty. They did not pray, until they dropped their weapons. And then, as always happens in dark times, they stood amid ashes and blood and began to beg for help, for salvation. Nere, the god of wrath from another world, saw this and shouted, "Stop them! They must not pray." But it was already too late. The great eye had fully opened.